Hello everyone! Good afternoon, evening, and occasionally some of you might be morning, but not usually this time of the day. Hi! So, I am doing some embroidery on my suit today, and I reached a point where I didn't like what Little Triangle was doing, so I'm trying out some test embroidery first. I'm gonna figure out what I want to do, make sure it's the right type. I have a lot of black threads. Fortunately for me, not only do I have a couple from previous projects, but was also gifted a variety pack for the holidays by a friend. So I have different things that I can try out to see what works for this little triangle. So find out how I want to do this, because I like what I used for the back stitch because it's real chunky. It's the same stuff that I used for my vamp outfit about a year ago. Yeesh, that was a year ago. So I figured I'd use that for the chunkier stuff where I just need a line. Bailey, hey, stop scratching. Yeah. And then we'll see where it gets me from there. I don't like the way that it looked on the triangle though. It just doesn't really... It does really well for large things, but as I found with when I was doing the vamp thing, it was really hard to keep it consistent in terms of twist, and it's really hard to get it to not just kind of look flat and bulky. It doesn't look nearly as shiny as it should. It tends to get fuzzy really fast. It works fine for stuff like, that, but not as well for fill-in space. So we're going to try a few different options, see what they end up working as. I've just got some scrap over here of different things so I can try out. So this one's just a flat silk, which I love flat silk. It fills in really fast and it looks really beautiful comparative to a lot of other options, but it is real nitpicky to work with. So it's one of my favorite options, but oof, I usually end up regretting the fact that I don't know, put my bags in a hand of moisturizer. My hands in a bag of moisturizer for a week before attempting it, because any little tiny bit of anything catches it, it just shreds. This is so fidgety with that. So you can get a beautiful result, but oof, it is hard to work with. There are people I want to do embroidery. I'm like, all right. Most, especially 18th century, it's most 18th century embroidery was done with flat silks. It is the same stuff that you still find used, I get mine from Japan. We're a Japanese company, even if it's not ordering directly from Japan, it's coming via Japan. And a lot of embroidery from the 18th and 18th century uses this, but oof, it is not beginner stuff. Bailey, hey, you stop scratching. Calm down, lay down. Yeah, I end up doing that a lot. I usually, to be honest, utilize the fact that I have spit, which I know sounds terrible, but it's historically one of the ways you deal with it. It's just the fact that you can't predict when it's going to happen. It'll be absolutely fine and perfect and dandy, and then something will just catch somewhere. So it's just unpredictable. So I don't avoid it. I've done a lot of really grand things with it. There are just some days where, especially if I've hurt myself and have a rough patch on the skin or something, it's just nope, can't do that today. I should be okay today. I don't think I have too many spots that are a problem. I'm also not sure with as shiny as this particular fabric is that it will actually even really show up. Options would be things like if I want to put padding underneath it, but that's a lot of work. Yeah. Yeah, I generally, if people want to move out of the cotton embroidery threads, which in my opinion are the most amount of effort for the least amount of reward, is the way I tend to define them. Like you can get what is embroidery, but it just doesn't have the same finished feeling usually. So, like, you put a lot of effort into something that usually just doesn't have the same thing. And you can get twisted silks that are similar weight. You can also, one of my favorite things to recommend to people if they want to try something other than cotton embroidery is to do wool, like crewel work, Crewel. Like that was one of the, like I've done a lot of embroidery through my life, but it was not embroidery. It was the same sort of like, yeah, cotton stuff and a lot of cross stitch and, you know, that sort of embroidery. And then I started picking up wool at one point and really loved that, and then felt brave enough to move over into doing some silk here and there, and just kept going from there. I had to do a ton in one of my jobs that I had. I shouldn't have been doing that much embroidery. That was not typical, but not historically typical or typical of that particular job in modern day either. But person in charge wanted embroidery, and it's the type of person to be like, let's do this thing, and then like disappear after an hour of work, leaving you to do the entire project by yourself. So I did a lot of embroidery in order to get things just done. Sorry, just remembering. Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay. So, I'm also trying to do this in the pattern that this little booklet sort of thing shows me. It's actually interesting because this is a design that I was already considering, and in this instruction book for tailoring from around 1920, it actually specifies that this particular little arrow design is one of the most common ways to finish off sleeves, in the sense of like a little bit of decoration on sleeves for women's suits. So I was like, hey, perfect. I will just pull that little bit so it shows in better detail what pattern it recommends for doing the embroidery, like what directions the stitches should go, to get a little bit more texture out of it. Okay, so we have a flat silk one to see that, which is nice, but it doesn't pop very much, so we'll see if I end up going with that or finding something that's got a little bit more raised loft to it or something. I don't know. Something about it that just, like, it shows up from different angles, but this fabric is so shiny that it, certain angles it just completely, like, flat on it just kind of disappears completely. So when you get the shine on it, then it shows up, but I don't know. Yeah, I still love cross stitch. I just don't do it anymore because I don't have a reason to. I'm trying to remember the last time I did. I mean, I've done flame stitch stuff, which is really close to cross stitch, because you've got to fill in the whole thing across, which is the same sort of concept. That's exhausting. Like, don't recommend. This is what size? 7244. Okay. So those are my other two options. Let's see that. Let's try the tiny one to see where that gets us. I don't think it's going to be what I'm looking for, but we're going to try it for science. Yeah, I learned cross stitch when I was really young. My grandfather did a lot of cross stitch, so I was just pretty sure my mother did too, but I remember seeing my grandfather do it. He was a surgeon, so that was a way to, one of his many ways of keeping his hands like dexterous and without actually, like you can't really just like practice surgery in the same way. Hello. So, yeah. I've also wanted to try queen stitch at some point, but it's just absolute detailed insanity. I've always been like, sounds cool, but I don't think I have the time or the brain space for that anytime soon. It's like filling in like cross stitch, but you do this fancy thing in every single square where you stitch the whole way across and then you actually like tie them into little bundles. And it's the same size as you would normally cross stitch in. It's just, oof, like absolute insanity. But I don't know, I've got some trips coming up. Maybe I'll take something, maybe not like that on the trip with me. I don't think I want to sit and sit on a vacation and drive myself nuts with like queen stitch, but I could definitely take some really nice embroidery. That's a possibility. This embroidery is for a suit that I'm working on, a 1920s women's suit. I'm trying to practice, figure out what I want to do, which thread I want to use, I guess is a better way of putting it. Oh, yeah, I've done embroidery for gifts a few times. I try very hard, considering my job is making things and showing people making things, to not make things for other people as gifts, because fitting that into my schedule and everything, just I always end up regretting it time-wise. So looks like from the lamp from the big star. You can't see some of my extra lights that I have around, but those really resemble it, as does my mic boom over there. So this already has enough, like, yeah, hopping light thing, but my all of my things in this room, if I can, are on like bendable, movable arms, because I can shift the light around. I need to get 2 more of them. I got 2. I am absolutely in love with these things. They're like, the actual light is about that big. It's just an LED, and you can go up and down and warm to cold. And they're just on bendable arms, and you can attach them, like you just like attach them to a table or any sort of thing like that with the little arm clamp, and then I can move them around. So I have 2 of them off of some shelves across, and I can aim them at me in my workspace over here to act kind of like little window things, or I have the one on that side is technically over the ironing board, and the other one's over my sewing table, like my sewing machine, so they can function for those too. And they please me so much. I just want to get so many more of them. Like all the different angles. But yes, they also look like the Pixar lamp, and it brings me joy in that regard too. This isn't taking too long, but it's definitely much less ideal. In order to get it really perfect and filled in, I'd have to spend a lot more time on it. I'm not sure I can cram that many stitches in easily. So again, the time factor, less ideal. I don't have a lot of these to do. I only have like 3 per sleeve, and then I'll have some on the pocket openings once I do those. Which I haven't decided exactly how I want to do that. I need to spend a little bit more time doing research as to the best option for how I want to do the pocket openings. Like, I can just do a welt, but there's like 5 different ways to do a welted pocket. So it's like, that will probably be what it is, but I need to decide, am I doing a double welt? Am I trying to do a more invisible welt, or a bigger one and like make it part of the design, or because it's like single welt, double welt, what size? I'll put these little triangles at the end to kind of blend it in with things, but there's so many options. That's the hard part with all of this, is just designing everything. And I definitely want to do more embroidery. Like, now that I've started this, I'm like, oh no, I'm getting the bug again. Like, I go through phases where I do some really crazy massive embroidery, and then I'm like, that was as much as I can handle for a long time. So I am... Apparently, I've taken enough of a break from embroidery. I haven't done embroidery in almost 2 years of any substantial... No, I take that back. I did it last year. I did it a year ago. It's like, wait, no. I did the embroidery for the same stuff I'm kind of doing right now, which is the vamp thing. I keep doing black on black. This is a poor decision in life. So that was a much more intensive amount of embroidery. It was very silly for me to do that much and not do an entire, like video on just the embroidery. It would have saved me a whole week. But it's fine. So. Okay. Option number 2 taken care of. As much as I like this wool tabletop in terms of like being the most neutral background, it doesn't have a shine to it, it has a little bit of a texture, but it's kind of mid-color and everything. It's definitely still frustrating the fact that it picks up, or I guess everything put on it picks up fuzz. So, okay. Those two things don't look terribly different. Interesting. I'd say the flat silk has a little more shine to it, but they're, not sure you'll be able to see, but they're pretty similar. So, flat silk on the left and a looser spun silk on the right. Like when you get real up close, you can tell the difference. There's a little more stitch texture. So far I like the flat better. So the big spool was just too chunky. I could only get like 4 or 5 stitches into each section, and it just was too much. Like, it just didn't look smooth. Yeah, definitely feeling like I need an embroidery binge. And problem is, like, I've got some lovely threads, like I said, that were given to me for the holidays and all that sort of stuff. And then I've also got a whole bunch of flat silks in similar tones, and I'm like, there's so many things I want to embroider right now. Like, I have so many lovely green and black embroidery threads. I'm like, the urge to do something is strong. Like, I don't have enough of them to do a ton, but this is actually the sleeve currently. So yeah, I don't have enough thread to do like a massive thing, but I could definitely do, like, especially for 1920s, there's lots of things that have like just a panel of embroidery in the front or at the waist or something like that. So I'm definitely considering doing something. I just have to decide what. That's going to be like a frontispiece or something that will be able to be shown off a bunch. So. Okay. Last sample attempt. Since I hated the really chunky one, but I have one size down from that. See if it looks better, worse, whatnot. We will find out. Yeah, it's a new piece of chalk, and I just ordered a whole bunch because I reached a point where I'm just like, I don't really particularly like this chalk that much. It's a little waxier than I would like. But I'm down to like my last piece anyway, aside from some colorful ones. Like, I could keep sharpening it, but I'm finding it really annoying to sharpen, and it's just, I'm fighting with it, and I don't like it, so ordered a different brand. Number of emails I've gotten from companies in the last like 2-3 weeks going, our prices are increasing. I'm like, yep. Not shocked by this. too hard to get a hold of supplies and everything's more and more expensive. Okay, I'm trying to not twist this up as I go. Over twist, under twist, either way. Trying to let it run a little bit flatter. But not as flat as the flat silk. So this will have a little more loft and volume to it. But it will also be less consistent. It's trying to change up tension in a couple of spots, and I do not want it to. That's the one problem with this sort of thread is it's very loosely spun. Oh. I'm just working on some embroidery for 1920s coat. Yeah, it's like a like there's a little bit of twist to it, but it's not overly so. It's like somewhere midway between what you'd expect for like a button twist and a flat embroidery, so it's kind of like half and half. I'm not particularly fond of it, but it does fill the space well, as I have found with all of these, and it is a really typical type of embroidery thread for early 1900s through 1920s. I haven't spent as much time with 1930s. So. Oh, that'd be fun. Turn those into a little pin or something. That'd be, oh man, I wonder if I could do that. I know you can get like super tiny pins. I wonder how complicated it would be to have like, I need to figure out something I can do with those in like a grander, more fun way, but I don't know. I feel like most of my ideas include actually inventing a product, and I do not have that much time, brain space on my hands. Oh, yeah. I think everybody's, no matter where you are, concerned. That's just the definition of how March seems to go every year. You're doomed to have a stressful March every year. I've come to that conclusion. I don't even remember what was happening in the world last March. I just know it probably wasn't a good thing. Seems to be the way it goes. So, it's one of the reasons I'm here. I'm forcing myself to just sit and sew this week and remember to breathe and not be panicked about stuff every once in a while, because you need to do that. Okay. This one's actually turning out pretty nice. We'll see. Just take care of everything. Yeah, I'm supposed to be over in Europe on like an actual vacation for the first time in over 2 years. Like a non-working vacation in like July. I'm like, I just need to, I really, please don't take this away from me. And I know that is like the least of a lot of people's concerns, but I'm just like, I feel like everything's just like, alright, can't everybody just get a break? Like, we all need just a week of nothing happening, nothing going on. Everybody just goes on vacation. That'd be great. But we'll need to like offset that. Because if everybody goes on vacation, then, like, you know, we still have to cook for ourselves. So. Yeah, full month. Yeah, we can like alternate back and forth. Like shift week sort of thing. Alright. Everybody gets a week off. Nothing is happening for this entire month. That's the rule. Like, for 3 out of the 4 weeks, you just work like normal. You're not supposed to do anything interesting, anything exciting. Stay off of social media. Just do what you need to do for your job and, like, complete and utter. No one's bothering anybody else. A quarter of the population goes on, like, a trip, and then just, like, we run through all 4 groups. So everybody gets a full week off, and everything's still functioning around them because 3/4 of the population is still doing what they need to do, so everything's still fine. But everybody gets a full week off. You just get told this is your week. Like, I know a lot of places do that, like, we have a month or something where everybody just goes on vacation and the country mostly shuts down. But in reality, I mean, you still have a lot of people doing work during that time, so you have to take them into consideration too. Because you're still going to have basic maintenance people. You're still going to have, like, if you're on vacation, you don't want to be going out scavenging for food and cooking a meal yourself or anything like that. You need the grocery to be functioning at worst, but generally you really just need, like, other people cooking. So if you just have overlap, you know, and it's mandatory. You can sit at home and not leave your house. That is 100% allowed. If you, like, don't want to participate in it by going on a trip, fine. Just go stop existing for a week. That's the only rule. Okay, last test. Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, I wish we could do that. I wish it was like you only worked... Because I think most people would be willing to work a few extra hours on, like, a regular week in order to, like, not have to work a full week. Most people work more than 40 hours anyway. But, like, the amount of stress and time, like, stress relaxation, all that sort of stuff that you'd be dealing with, people would be taking off a lot less time in general, like, on the other weeks, so. I really need to find a way to use this thread. I need to learn. I have this... I was going through my embroidery drawer looking for things and remember that I have this lacquer thread. It's been in my... It's actually, like, lacquered. It's from the same Japanese embroidery center place. I guess they're in Georgia. And it's just so pretty. But but it's also really thin. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. My last one was not exactly the best proportionally. A little low on the thing, but it definitely has the most, like, impact of the 3. It's the, like, loftiest and shows up the best out of the group. It's really hard to show this on camera. Like, it obviously has the most texture, but like I said, it has the most loft. It's going to be the closest to the thread I was already using. So I think I'm going to go with that, even though it's not perfect by any means, but I think up against the chunkiness of this, it's going to make the most sense. So, cool. That answers my question. Hooray. I can just use those two. Alright. I'm going to go ahead and stitch the next line with the heavier thread, so that way I can just do all 3 of the triangles at the same time. I don't know if you can hear the dog snoring. Yeah, the black is, like, it's a little puffier. If this was a little bit larger, I'd almost consider putting, like, a little piece of black felt that's the triangle shape underneath of it to really make it pop, but I think it's just a little small to do that. 5 days of no saying should or have to. Yep. Yeah. I am definitely in need of a break. Not too distant future. It's like all of my breaks have still been very much working trips. It's like even though I traveled to 3 different places last year, they were all very much work trips. Yeah. Oh yeah. Learning how to say no, or at the very least not volunteering yourself is... Oof. Yeah. It's like realization that that won't actually help you out that much in the long run. It's a certain point where it just stops really being that useful to you. It's plenty useful to the company, but... Alright, for this I'm just doing a little back stitch. So, nothing exciting, but it works very well for making a nice chunky line with this thread versus having to do like a satin stitch and spend 20 hours doing it just to get one line. Oof. At that point I just hook up my machine and go. I think that is when I'm like, I will just put the silk thread in my sewing machine and do a really tight zigzag. Which I have done numerous times before. It works just fine. Keep catching all these little white threads in this. Or I guess they're probably gray threads from this. Stop it. Yeah. I definitely understand the burnout thing. Went from burning out on one thing to burning out on the next. So, like trying to recover a bit this year, but oof. It is. Finding a new normal is taking some effort. So do I get more done streaming or working without? It's kind of dependent on what it is. If it is something where I'm supposed to be sitting and focusing and repeating a task like this, where I'm just stitching over and over and over again, then I actually find I get more work done this way. I will look up at the screen occasionally, but unlike if I put on something that I'm wanting to watch where I have to keep stopping and looking at it, I don't spend a lot of time with my eyes off my work, and I feel like I'm doing something other than just this repetitive task. That's why most of my lives are something that is either repetitive or is a very, like, I can do this within an hour sort of thing or something. Something that I know that if I don't have a distraction, I will find one and it will be more successful than this at distracting me, if that makes sense. So if I know I need to do something to keep me from being bored, this is always pretty high up on the list of options, unless I'm doing something on my sewing machine or needing to focus. So I do have some audiobooks. I'm trying to get used to those. My brain just doesn't do audiobooks very well. I used to listen to podcasts when I was driving a lot more, but I haven't gotten back into those. I've generally found if I'm in here working, I just zone out. It's, the equivalent of reading the page without actually reading the page. So I'm listening to it, but I'm not actually paying attention, and I'll have to stop and go back and stop and go back over and over again. So even if it's like a really intense plot, I won't be able audibly. It doesn't. In terms of all of my senses, audio is the hardest one for me to really like process and grip onto. So, yep. So yeah, this is sometimes much more effective in forcing me to sit and keep working, because I can't just stop and spend 10 minutes flipping through TikTok because, okay, well, I need a quick break and I'll just, I'll just watch a couple videos and then like half hour later, oh no. But yeah. 1mm ivory silk braid. Which type of braid? Like a twist braid, a braided braid, a cord braid. Because there are a few different answers for that. I recently found a supplier in Japan for really narrow silk cord type situations that are technically a braided cord. That I found on Etsy. Highly recommend. I can grab the brand if that's the sort of thing you're looking for. I think there should be some in the container behind me. But aside from antiques, that's the only one that I have come across. Oh, wait, there's... Oh, no, that's not supposed to be in there. Whatever. Because I came across some antique, but this stuff doesn't hold up terribly well. Like, it's a little dry and fragile. Found that on Etsy, but again, not the most ideal. And this stuff comes smaller. This is what I got. So, like, that's, and like I said, I'm pretty sure it comes much narrower than that as well. But this is, there we go. There's the name. Atelier Miyabi. Yeah, Miyabi. So that's on Etsy, and yeah. So these things, they come in so many different, like, sizes. So if you need, like, for 18th century stays, the cording that you normally use for, like, actually tying those up, this is the closest I've ever come to stuff. This stuff I got because it actually resembles early 19th century shoelaces. So, like, that was my, like, discovery last year. Like, wait. So I really like them for that sort of thing. And I'm pretty sure they have some really narrow stuff as well. I just didn't need that narrow. Keep coming back confused. Sorry. We're talking about, it's all probably just going to revolve around embroidery, silk, cords, and things like that today. We'll revolve around that. Yes, I do love Stephen Fry. That is one of the few that I actually, like, for some reason I put him on and actually pay attention. I need to look that up for Sherlock Holmes. That'd be neat. I've been trying to make my way through the Silmarillion. I, like, read it many years ago, but I am not great with remembering names, so I feel like a lot of it just kind of didn't hold in my brain very well, so I'm listening to it again, and then I'm gonna go, like, probably listen to some of the other books of, you know, Middle-earth type variety, and then come back around to it. Try to connect some things back together. Perfect. Yeah, there's a few really good antique sellers on Etsy that I just follow all the time. I just have it set up to, like, alert me whenever they put anything up. I'm like, what do you got? Show me. Let's go take a look. Like, did I think that I needed that? No, but I'm gonna get it anyway. That's why I've got boxes behind me of all sorts of trimmings and things. Oh yeah, I can't remember if that Greek myth book is on my, if I already downloaded it, or if it's just on my wish list. If it's just my wish list, I should go download that. One of the things I found unfortunate with Audible is that if you, like, close your account, you lose your, like, credits. So I need to go spend my last ones before I get charged again for the month, so I can, like, actually pause it until I can catch up and make sure that I am going to actually. I was like, I'm going to do audiobooks, and then it was like, I have too much filming to do, and I can't have sound in the background. That's the other problem. I have to keep stopping and starting if I'm filming. So, Dresden vows. Oh, neat. Play the game of which direction is the best one to backstitch in. Sometimes it's horizontal, sometimes it's vertical, or in between. Just gonna see what's allowing me to keep the most consistent stitches. My favorite podcasts to listen to when I was driving back and forth to grad school, and I don't remember the names of any of them exactly, but it's a series of like lots of different like things you didn't know sort of topics, and one of them was all about food history, or just food in general, and it just had all this like amazing like, let's talk about the history of sugar, and I was like, this is amazing. I wouldn't stop talking about like big sugar for like a week after that. Sure annoyed many people. Like, did you know? Or did you know the actual history of watermelons? And I don't like, for whatever reason, that I can listen to for like, and really pay attention to for long periods of time. Because it just sticks to, like, I don't have to fully follow something the whole way through. It's just information. So yeah, I need to get back into those. I just haven't set my schedule, my life, I don't know how to put it. Like, everything has been so random for the last couple of years that I've yet to really settle into what normal is and all of that. So it's just trying to figure out where these things fit in. Trying to create a more consistent day. So I was starting to come up with something there for a while, but then I changed up sort of things I was doing beginning of the year, so I need to come up with a new daily schedule. I was trying to find time to do more lives in the mornings, but I think it's just going to be Friday mornings and then like an afternoon at some point. Because I find that my best time to sit and focus and actually edit is in the mornings, when I'm not quite ready to get myself off of the sofa or out of a chair and just kind of want to like sit and just be kind of brain dead for a while and do that. Like, editing's perfect for that because I don't have to think too hard about it. So I'm like, all right, I need to edit in the morning, sew in the afternoon. Oh yeah, Caitlin Doherty is wonderful as well. I haven't listened to any of her books. I have a friend who's like, that I know from my Williamsburg days, who is like really similar person. It's just it's hilarious. It's like, if this person had started their own YouTube channel, that's exactly what it would have been. Like, she just, the only difference is that she came at it from a slightly more history background, having tried the mortician thing in order to, like, done it for a short while in order to better understand the history portion of it versus, you know, kind of coming at it from the other direction. We rented a coffin, or I guess I wasn't there, but, like, her friends rented her, a coffin for her, PhD graduation. Twisting the wrong way. You need it to be just the right amount of twist on this. Neat. stuff like that that I always think about when people that you meet a person who doesn't actually know you, and they're like, oh, what do you do for your job? Like, what do you do? Like, what's your profession? And there's always this like, how do I explain this without going too far into detail type jobs like that. It's like, even my stuff, I just say like, oh, I'm a historian. If they're interested in history, then we will have a much longer conversation, but most of the time they really don't care, and that doesn't prompt nearly as many questions as me being like, oh, I do YouTube and social media, and because then people have way more opinions on that than they do on historian. Because I've had every once in a while, like, that's come up as a, oh, that's what this person does, and like, oh, I've always thought about. It's like, oh no, it never ends well. Because then you get pitched for like 5 YouTube channel ideas, and you're like, that's great, I can't help you with any of this. I don't need to look into her stuff then. This thread is so interesting because it twists the opposite way that I expect it to. Most of my other threads that I work with, most of my sewing threads twist the other direction, and it's just like, I have to really think about it, twist it the right way. And I think I have set up to stitch with a little bit of added twist to my sewing, which goes the opposite way with the way that I grab and push the needle. So I'm like forcing myself to not twist as I go, because that's untwisting it rather than twisting it back up. Just like, eh. But I'll get the sleeves done, and then I'll figure out how I want to do pockets, and I'll get that done for those. Should be nice and easy. All of these. I'm choosing a fairly simple option. That is also something that I've already got all the supplies available for, which is the other key thing. Like, could I do this with like getting a nice cord and yes, but also this is really fast and easy, and I don't have to spend any money to do it, so hooray. I've already spent way too much money on this fabric. We're not going to talk about that. Allowed myself an investment. Yeah, I'm throwing money at a bunch of other stuff, but didn't need to do more on this one. I'm going to clip this because it's driving me nuts. Shifted just enough. There we go. Let's get that flatter. Just a little bit of adjustment with the fact that everything's on the bias down here. Nope, sit flat, don't move. Yeah, there's other places I'd rather spend the money than on some fancy cord. Yeah, I can definitely see how, like, I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons why I really love teaching history and that sort of stuff. It's helping people understand the world around them, because the way that things function now is dependent on the history of things and how we got to this point. So, understanding history and understanding the way things are actually done, you know, the behind the scenes, how it's made sort of stuff. Like, we've lost so much connection to how things are done. And it can be really scary then when we suddenly have to deal with that and answer questions and make decisions related to it. We have no knowledge of it. So. Yeah, investing in good historical fabrics makes a lot of sense. There are definitely things that I will recommend over others. Like, there are things that are worth investing in to start, and there are things that don't make as much of a difference. But, like, you know, and some things are, I will always say I recommend investing in it because of not just, oh, it's a natural fiber, but because it will be friendlier to work with, it will be easier to sew, you'll get a better result out of it, and it will be longer lasting, that sort of stuff. It's one of the reasons why, even though I am a little bit allergic to wool, I used to be a lot more allergic to it. Just kind of gotten used to it. And I found obviously different wools are different. Like, this is not going to make me itch at all. It's satin. It's just not going to be a problem. But like, it's just so much friendlier to work with, like, wool for so many things than like silk. And way back here, and before YouTube was really like a place for this sort of stuff, or Twitch existed, or any of that stuff, pre-Instagram days of LiveJournal and Blogger, I had a whole blog post that I did on why I always recommend people start with wool. And, like, of all the places you're going to invest a little bit more money, you can get, for just a little bit more money, a really good quality wool. It's not the most expensive thing out there. Like, you can go super expensive with it, yes, but you don't need to. Just, like, a hair up makes a big difference. And wool can have such beautiful finishes, look very luxurious, look very expensive, but wears really well, is usually very easy and forgiving to stitch with. You know, it just shapes a lot easier, and you can heat press and shape it and form it, and it's just, like, of all of the natural fibers to invest in, I will always say wool and linen are the two that are the worthwhile investment. Like, silk is beautiful and all, but I generally never recommend people jump to silk until they're in, like, you're ready. What? My battery's, oh no, is it not plugged in properly? It's, no. Like, I plugged my computer in. Every time this laptop tries to just die on me, I swear. Like, every time. Do that really fast just so it doesn't die as quickly, just in case. Now the, must have bumped the plug and it unplugged itself from the other end. Like, no! At least I caught the warning in time this time. It always, after like an hour, it always kicks me off of this. Yep. Oh no, there wasn't live before that. That was just where you posted things you were talking about. Well, I mean, if you want to be able to wash things, then there are certainly washable wools. I mean, I do wash a lot of my wools, to be honest. The stuff that I don't wash, it's the stuff that it's because of the structure, not the actual fabric. So, most of my wool trousers I do wash. I just wash them in, you know, hand wash, or like I have a machine that has like a section that's an upper section that's meant to function more like hand washing. It's very gentle, doesn't agitate a lot, and use a wool safe detergent. Or you get a mixed cloth or whatever. So wool is still very washable. You just have to choose the right finish and fiber combination and all of that. There's a big difference between like a wool sweater that can shrink and a flat woven wool that shouldn't. Like, I'm not planning on washing this, but I would be comfortable washing it. It might change its shininess a little bit depending on the amount of agitation and things, but it theoretically would not shrink very much. So you just have to redo it. Yeah, all of my stuff gets washed on cold, gentle. Doesn't matter what it is. I've ruined too many things over the years. Most of the things that have been lost were sweaters or rayon or linen or things that just got shrunk by being put in the wrong heat. I have a rayon blouse that's driving me nuts. It's a lovely shirt. It's a stripe that I would use. It goes to so many things, but it's a rayon chalice, and it just, or challis, or however you want to say it, and it just shrinks every time. Even though I wash it on cold, I hang it to dry, I stretch it out. Like, it's gone from being a normal length shirt to like up here. It's lost like 4 inches in the sleeves, and I've steamed it every time, trying to pull it back out, steam it back out, get it back to the length that it's supposed to be, but it's never quite the same as the last time, and every time it just shrinks a little bit more, a little bit more. So it's kind of at that point I'm like, I'm not sure I can really wear this again. Wash things on hot and red. Oh yeah. Same sort of thing. I do my laundry separate from everybody else's. Everybody that I've ever had in the house, like, that was determined many, many years ago. No matter who I'm around, like, nope, we all do laundry separately. Then no one is responsible for my clothing, because I had too many people that mixed laundry up and ruined my stuff. I've never ruined my own stuff. It's just always been other people, and nobody wants that responsibility. So I'm like, yeah, I will do my laundry, you do your laundry, everybody's happy, we're good. Especially since like other people I know use like fabric softener or whatever. The only rule I have is that there are no scented detergents ever. Hard and fast rule. Because that's not a you use it and then no one else does. It's a everyone in the house now smells like that, and the entire house smells like that, and everything smells like that. So. Yep. Oh yeah, fabric softener. Oof. I hate it so much. It's like you're just eating up your fabric. You're literally putting a coating on it. Like, you're just putting silicone on your fabric. It's not good. Okay, second line taken care of. Back and do the third one. Yeah, a lot of my stuff gets hung or laid flat to dry. Technically, I have like a really fancy washer and dryer. I use the washer portion a lot more than the dryer. The washer, like I said, has an upper section that is for hand wash, as they consider it, for delicates. I originally hoped I could use it for a lot more things, but it does not get things terribly clean. So it can get stains out just fine, but it won't, like, if you have like dirt or something like on you, it won't get that off very well. It doesn't agitate it enough to really like remove. But it's great for like washing your silk blouse or your wool trousers or whatever. So I really enjoy that. And then the dryer has a flat dry, like, you can choose air dry type portion on top, so I can dry things faster without heat, which is great, but I don't tend to use that as much because I live in the desert. And stuff dries the next day anyway, so I just do my laundry, hang it up, and then put it away the next day. But occasionally I use it when it's like, oh shoot, I need this dried and done faster, and I forgot. But I really haven't had a, like... I didn't buy these things with accounting for the change in lifestyle and COVID and all of that stuff, and the, like, not really leaving my house and doing much. So I figured I needed a lot more, because there were definitely a lot more days. It's like, oh shoot, I forgot to get that dry before, or oh no, I gotta stand on this, let me wash it really fast and then dry it and then put it back on. Nope. Oh yeah, dryer sheets. I use a wool ball for mine. Yet another contested thing in the house. I'm like, there's like the argument over, no, I still get too much static if I just use that. I'm like, do you, or do you just think you do? Because I don't have any issues with static with any of my clothing. Oh yeah. Yeah, if you're collecting older stuff, washing it is definitely a good idea. I really need to box up a whole bunch of fabrics I don't want anymore and send them off to, like, a fabric resale place. Just thinking of a few things, I'm like, I'm never going to use that. I need to just get that away. I need to donate that. Yeah, it's just because a lot of people store fabrics in less than ideal climate places, basements and attics. Yeah. Yeah, I just pulled a whole bunch of old newspaper out of one of the pairs of shoes that I've got. Which one was that? It was the 1890s boots that I've got. They had a bunch of newspaper from the 1970s in them. I was like, yeah, that's just gonna go in the trash. The only newspaper that I ended up with and have deigned to keep on a longer form version was out of my husband's house. He grew up in a much older house, and I guess in the attic they found a stack of newspapers from the 19-teens. So one of them is the newspaper of the Lusitania sinking. And I was like, I think I'm gonna keep that. I guess just put between two cardboard pieces and shoved in one of the closets. I should probably actually properly preserve it, but oof. Okay, we're getting there. Trying to prevent this from stretching out of place too much. Probably should have laid down more basting threads. I will do that in the next one. More anchors. Oh man, I have a whole bunch of tweeds from the 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s that are from my grandmother, who purchased a bunch of ultra suede and wool tweeds and things during that era, and she'd always get a matching blouse fabric and a matching lining fabric and, yeah, matching zippers. I think we've gone through all the zippers at this point. But I still have most of the fabrics because it's just really itchy wools and a lot of polyester. And more ultra suede than I will ever know what to do with in my entire lifetime. There's no way, like, I'm just like, it's like high value, like it's expensive. Ultra suede is not cheap. So I don't just want to like give it all away, but I have no idea what to do with it aside from little projects here and there. I'm just like, it's not. Maybe some point it'll be like trendy again for a little while. I doubt it. It's like so environmentally bad. Problem is, it's in a lot of colors I don't think I'll ever use. Yeah, I definitely have a few that were like official sets from her as well. Yeah, I don't exactly get much history out here either, in terms of like local stores. Like when I go out to visit Abby, it's going to be really dangerous to have the two of us in the Midwest again. We're both from the Midwest, but we haven't spent time together in the Midwest really much, and so we're just going to be like, all right, antique shopping, here we come. Let's go find all of the things, especially if we're looking for stuff for Abby's, wherever she ends up moving into, like a new house sort of situation. It's like, all right, we got to go buy some furniture. Anyway, look for some like decorations and that sort of thing. So we're just gonna like probably just do really like spend a few days just driving out around places, finding antique stores. At least by doing that, I'll probably get to see all of my family out there. Like, all right, I know of this great place up here. It's 3 hours north, but it's worth it. Yeah, my bigger problem will be the fact that like I can't buy anything I can't bring back with me. It's like, oh, bold emerald green. I am pretty positive I've got some in that color because again, grandmother collected most of this ultra suede in the late 80s when a local mill end type place, like remnants type place, went out of business and closed. I specifically remember as a child, one of my early memories is going to that place when it was closing and it just being absolute chaos. It's probably not emerald green, it's probably like Kelly green, like, which is why I wouldn't have used it for anything, because like if it's like a nice rich emerald green, that I can use in my wardrobe. The really obnoxious bright like Kelly green from the early 80s, less so. Just probably what it is. She tended to do a lot of, as I call them, sherbet colors. My grandmother liked sherbets, particularly in like the orange to peach range. She had a little bit of some lavenders and purples in there. Lots of orangey peach tones. Bright pinks. Red. Red is in there a decent amount. Aqua. So much aqua. Just looks like freaking ice cream. Candy stuff. Yeah, hoarding stuff. Oof. Yep. fortunate that I don't at least feel like I have hoarding tendencies. I like getting rid of stuff. I just want it to go to good places. Like, I always like to think about that. I'm like, if I was told you have to get rid of 50% of your stuff in your house, I'd be like, okay, I know what 50% it's going to be. And some of that stuff, I just be like, do I get to choose where it goes to? That's all I care about. Like, I have clothes that I'm trying to get rid of, but they're stuff that I made, and so it's this weird process of, like, I can't just donate it because they'll consider it trash. And I know people would like it, the process of getting it to people is complicated. But it's one of the reasons why I was like, oh, now I know of, secondhand fabric store, even if it's all the way on the other side of the country. Whatever, I will box up all of the fabric I don't want and send it off. Donate that all to her. It'll be worth it. I have so much to do that with. I just need to. I have a couple big boxes I've been saving. I just need to fill it. Get rid of it. See, the only reason I think that I don't feel like a hoarder is because, though I like to acquire stuff, I also like giving stuff to people. Like, really like that equally. So, I have no problem just giving stuff away in concerning amounts, honestly, sometimes. Like, thank goodness I'm not around more people, otherwise I would do that a lot more. Like, if I was physically around more people, I would have a lot less stuff. Because a lot of my, obviously things like fabric, it's stuff that I'm planning on using, but sometimes tastes change. I find better options. Something isn't what I expected when it comes in. But when it comes to, the rest of my stuff, it's just, a lot of things I like experiencing and seeing and, getting to know for a while, and then I feel like, oh no, now I can move on to somebody else. So... I have a lot of... Oh, I should call... If I'm done here early enough, I'll call. Otherwise, I need to call tomorrow and set up an appointment for Thursday for the local donation place for a bunch of clothes. Clothes that have been... The pile of clothes to give to, donate that has been growing for years at this point, so it is not, a giant pile of recent stuff. Some of the stuff hasn't been worn in, 10 years. It's just realization. Because, I cleared out a lot of stuff when we moved, but there's only so much you can do in the middle of moving. So, I have a lot of stuff. I'm like, yep, it just needs to go to the local donation place. Because a lot of my stuff is very appropriate for nicer businessy attire. It's not, jeans and t-shirt stuff. It's stuff that would be really useful for the local, for local purposes of... there's a place that, the main point is not reselling the clothing, it's making sure that it gets to people that actually need it for, job interviews and stuff like that, so. Yeah. Well, my problem is I don't want an exchange, I just want to give it all away, I don't want it. I've thought about that, I'm like, I need to set up some sort of fabric or costume exchange or something like that. I know there's stuff like that on Facebook, but it's usually people selling stuff. But then I think about it and I'm like, no, because I don't want anything back. I don't want more, I want less, I want to get rid of it all. So I do that, I definitely do purge through a lot of things pretty often, and that's what keeps me from feeling like I collect too much stuff. That, and I have a very narrow window of what I'm willing to collect. So, that helps. I'm picky. And not being able to go out and physically shop in stores also helps greatly. I'm much less likely to impulse buy online than I am in person. I am too easily swayed by things like color when it comes to clothing. Oh no, egg down. Yeah, I also don't want to use Facebook. So I totally understand that. I avoid it as much as possible. Like, I am on there reading things from other people that I know, but that is about it. I try to not over-involve. I'm supposed to be a mod for one group, and I really need to get more active in that. I don't know if we switched over. We're going to switch over to approving all posts to help with quality. It's supposed to be very research history heavy, and it's just like a little right now. That's about the only thing I'm technically supposed to do on there, but since I have so many people that I know from so many different points in my life, it is the easiest way to keep track of all of those people. So I occasionally try, like, every 6 months to make a post that's like, hi, I am still alive. This is what I'm doing now. Because that's really all I want out of most people. Yeah. Oh yeah, I have so much stuff just sitting in, unchecked out baskets. Yeah, just for success. Yes, that's very similar to what the local place is. So, and in the city I'm in, we have a fairly large and growing homeless population. So it is, and issues with poverty and all of that. So if I can donate to local places, I will always try to do that so things don't have to get moved around. And it's really close by. It's just they only do appointment only on Tuesday, Thursdays. So I need to call and make an appointment. So it's just like, oof. Embroidery on men's clothes. It depends on, if we're talking modern or historic or what clothing. So a lot of times my favorite place for embroidery, and the one that I will always... I made one suit once, which is still one of my favorite things that I've made. I did an embroidered waistcoat, so it was black wool with a rusty gold almost embroidery, not like shiny gold, but that tone range embroidery. Was it? It wasn't wool. It was a rougher silk or something. But I did that, and the suit itself was actually, because it was for a character, kind of a very dusty eggplanty color, which was really, it just all looked beautiful together. So embroidery on a waistcoat, 1840s, 1850s embroidered waistcoats, glorious, beautiful. That is the perfect place to use embroidery. But yeah, on coats and things like that, it's much harder. A lot of times stuff like this, like what I'm doing here, that subtle, just a few lines of something can be beautiful, or something on the collar, or embroidered handkerchief situation or something like that. It's definitely harder to pull it off as a full out suit, but waistcoats, go nuts with those. So yeah, and I've definitely seen, buttonholes. You can do some really beautiful embroidery around buttonholes too. That's some of the prettiest stuff. 18th century does that a lot, into the early 19th century, where they'll have the buttonhole, but they'll have a little bit of scroll work on the edge of the buttonhole. It works if you have buttonholes down the whole thing. It doesn't do as well if you've just got a couple low down. That looks a little weird. But if you don't want to full embroider a waistcoat, you could definitely do a little bit there too. But embroidered waistcoats, oof, those are my favorites. I love doing that sort of embroidery for menswear. That's one of my favorite things. Still think about it, that's one of my favorite things that I've made. I have no idea where that ended up. I know the guy that I made it for, I don't think he fits into it anymore, so I don't know if it ended up, he still has it, or if he gave it to somebody else, or what. I should ask. Adam, where did it go? I just want to know. I'm just curious. If you don't know what to do with it, I will take it back. Make sure it gets to somebody else who can. Okay. Yeah, black on black, lovely texture. You can also add just a little bit of color in there or something. Black. One of my favorite styles of embroidery is white on black. Like, and I could definitely see like incorporating it in other less traditional places and having it be really cool. Like, some of my favorite simple embroidery comes from things like shirt collars. And you could totally do that for like men's shirts. Some embroidery on a men's shirt collar, that would be a really interesting way to incorporate embroidery without it being like too much and competing, but have it be a really unexpected and beautiful addition there. That'd be fun. Alright. You can definitely see a little bit of puckering because of the fact this is so shiny from that angle, but I haven't ironed this yet, so that'll steam that out a smidge. Should be good. Yeah, if you're going to invest the time in embroidery, don't make it subtle. Yeah, definitely see that. Okay, yeah, the leopard cheetah things on the waistcoat. Yeah, men's waistcoats. Whew, they get wild. Bailey, don't lick your leg, man. So. I mean, cuff embroidery seems like a military thing now, but one of the key things to note is historically military-inspired clothing, celebration of military-style things is a very late 18th, mostly early 19th century beginning of that phenomena. So you don't see it aside from a few examples here and there. And there's plenty of embroidery and other sorts of things that are done in cultures across the world that were not like that were there well before embroidery off of military became, you know, something that they actually pulled from. So I think there are some things that really help identify something as military versus not. So it's just avoiding certain aspects that can really clock military. Such as certain color combination. I mean, you expect, like, you look at 18th century military, they like to do gold and silver if they do embroidery on wool coats. So, you know, you just avoid doing that, or a lot of tape trim sort of stuff, especially in the 19th century, like straight just bands of gold or silver lace, like what they call lace, not lace. Not our modern idea of lace, but what they called lace, just braids. So that sort of stuff versus something that's like polychrome, lots of colors in it, or a few interesting color schemes, that stops looking military really fast. But yeah, the metallic is really the thing that, in my opinion, reads military more than anything. Yeah, same thing, metal buttons. So gold and silver, if you avoid gold and silver accents, it will not read nearly as military. And that's why, like, you know, I can do black on black. It's not going to read military because it would be the point of doing it that much time. Like, the reason they do that on military is because it shows who someone is really fast and is really bright and in your face without using bright colors. It's really obvious what rank somebody is or importance level somebody has when it's literally glinting at you from across the room. Which also speaks to everything. Yeah. I mean, there's there's definitely ways that you can do black with gold, silver, red. Like you have to have combinations of things that aren't found in military. Like there are some things that are really consistent about where they put accent colors, how they like line things up, and there's definitely ways to completely throw off the military look. But it definitely takes like understanding what registers as military to us. So yeah, like flowers don't seem military. Yep. But a lot of like horizontal lines do read as military. So yeah, most of the military embroidery that I've done has been very like scroll work. It kind of can read as leaves, but it's very nondescript scroll work stuff. A lot of the originals that I've worked with for 18th century. But okay, so make sure that up high enough. There. Okay. Yeah, in general, we're about due for another round of embroidery, being trendy. Part of me just feels like I can predict what's coming next purely by the fact that like I feel like my entire early interest in modern fashion is just starting to repeat itself again. It's like, oh, the late 90s, early 2000s is in. I'm like, okay, well then I know what's coming next. Like I know what trends we're in and what might actually be able to communicate well to the next thing. And I think embroidery is definitely like that sort of feel is definitely around the corner. Which I would not be mad about. Finally to the point of doing these little triangles. Yay! Zoom this in slightly since I'm doing stuff so close up. There we go. When did the 20-year cycle begin? Well, I mean, it's always been a cycle. It's not always 20 years, but you can see the pulling up of older styles goes way back. I'm trying to think of how far back I have to go before that really... Like, basically, once you reached a point where fashion was moving just fast enough that people didn't necessarily remember the people that were guiding fashion were alive during that time, but there were reference materials available for it, like portraitures and things like that. So, like, you can definitely see examples of pulling inspiration from, like, late 16th century and certain 18th century things. It's really obvious once you reach the 19th century that they start kind of repeating stuff over and over again, and they start pulling from previous eras and really pulling inspiration from those. It is like really, really common once you reach like the latter half of the 19th century, not surprisingly. What else? I saw something about this recently that was like, we're just repeating this all over again. Look, it's just this style again. But I mean, you can pick one attribute out of fashion and just follow its rise and fall over and over and over again. Like, the sleeve size, where you have fullness on your sleeves, does the exact same path over and over and over again. So I can tell you what we're going to do with sleeves next. Because you see, like, you get this like fullness that becomes fullness that becomes fullness that then tightens up the whole way, and then they start adding fullness here, and then they just keep getting like bigger and more open down at, like, because there's only 3 places you can put fullness on sleeves. You can put fullness up at the shoulders, like height, you can do fullness out to the side, and you can do fullness at the bottom. You're always going to have it one place, and we just transition between those 3 places over and over again. So we've had a lot of fullness out to the side for a while, so we're probably going to go through a transition soonish. I'm starting to see a lot more fullness up here right now as well, but I'm gonna hazard a big guess that we're gonna fall to like fullness down here, like at the wrist really soon. Like I feel like we're about due for that. So that sort of thing. Yeah. And it's like there's not a specific thing that causes any of these styles to be in style, more just than the fact that like we haven't done them for a while. Or it might be that like nowadays a movie comes out and it's set in a particular historic era or feel or vibe to it, and so there's a lot of stuff that we pull inspiration from there. So 1950s revival. We're not due for one just yet. The last 1950s revival was like full out late 2000s, right around 2010. So 1950s revival was big when I was just out of college, like, because I was wearing that sort of stuff because nothing looked like that at all, and I was making my own stuff. And then like that was when ModCloth and all of those companies came out, and it just like got like big skirts, big longer skirts were super trendy there right around 2010. So we're not too far off from that. I don't think it's gonna, like, there's definitely fuller skirts right now with like cottagecore and that sort of stuff, but it's a little bit different. But I don't think we're gonna head to the really like 1950s curvy figure for a little bit. I think we're gonna avoid that for like at least another 10 years. Yeah, fullness at the wrist. Yeah, you gotta learn how to do that and then go for something. Like there's this movement that you do before you reach for something to keep out of the way. So yeah, there's definitely like I can see some 1930s in things. 1930s and like late 20s, early 30s. I'm seeing a lot of that, which is not surprising because that's very similar to 1970s, which is where they 1970s copied off of. So 1970s copied off of late 20s, early 30s. And then 1990s copied off of 1970s, and now we're copying off of the 90s. So it just like there's still the essence there, and it'll still drift around, but it's definitely not nearly as like pure as it used to be. But yeah, 1930s with the slight ruffles but not overly shaped figure makes sense right now. Yeah, especially with the big clunky shoes and all that too. I mean, you can see that in some ways, but I mean, when you think about it, we've got 90s did 70s, 80s did 40s, like really went for the 1940s, big shoulder pads, all that, like late 30s, early 40s, like yeah, late 30s, early 40s. That's what came out in the late 80s, early 90s. So that's a 50 year. 70s did 20, so 50 years. 60s did early 20s, like 24, because obviously we're used to that straight cut A-line, whatever, like, so that did more like, that did a lot of like 20s styles in there, and it did a little bit of other mixes in there as well. 50s was a Victorian throwback, but yes, go get some sleep. And 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 it's never just one thing, because like the Victorian stuff influenced all of those earlier 20th century eras, and so those pop back up again. Like, because obviously the Empire waistline of the 1970s was reminiscent of both the 19 teens, which was copying the Empire waistline, because that's when they termed it Empire waistline. Prior to that, that was not defined as that until the 19 teens started calling it that. But that was what we think of as, 1800s, 18 teens. So there are numerous cycles running at the same time. So, because you've got something that they're replicating from 100 years ago, but also replicating something from 50 years ago at the same time, because they kind of go together, because 50 years ago they were also kind of into that thing that was 50 years before that, or whatever. So, it's just constant influence of different eras over and over again. And, like, you can see some logic behind what comes when, and the mindset of things, but there's only so much you can attribute directly. My phone just keeps giving me notifications. I'm like, none of these are things I need to take care of. Yep, everything just repeats. I mean, just think of when we get giant shoulder pads, like that repeats over and over again, or puffy sleeves, that repeats over and over and over again, so. It's like, puffy sleeves. All right, well, obviously we can go back to like late 80s, early 90s with that. We can go back to 1930s with that. We can go to 1890s and to 1830s. And just, 90s and 30s. 30s and 90s tend to like puffy sleeves. But yeah, it keeps repeating. We're just able to transition a little faster than we used to be, so it just keeps speeding up a bit. Oh man, one of my videos that I want to do soonish is I have what I call my time capsule box. And it's got a whole bunch of clothes that I got when I was younger. And I got really when I first really got into modern fashion when I was around college age. And I saved some of my favorite key pieces. So with all this stuff that's trending right now, this stuff, if I put it up for sale, would have to fight off the teenagers. Like, it is prime good stuff, because I bought nice stuff back then. From companies that no longer sell things like that. Basically, BB used to be a luxury brand that wasn't all about like velour tracksuits and rhinestones on your butt. I don't even know what they sell anymore. That's just what they sold 10 years ago. I haven't seen them in a while. But back when BB did suits and dresses and like the flashiest, like hyper high fashion business attire sort of stuff, like they gradually went like less and less away from that, but I have some of the most fantastic stuff from them. Oh, BB is a brand. It's a clothing brand that, like I said, I don't even know what's happened to them in the last 10 years. The only reason I kept up with them at all was because there was a like outlet version of them at the outlet mall near where I lived in Virginia. But they used to have just beautiful stuff. I got like a 1960s style linen suit from them once that was black, sort of a beigey tan color and white, had like big fabric buttons that were white with a tan in the middle, and it was mostly black with like, short, like 3/4 length, a little bit looser sleeves that had like bands of the contrasting colors around it. Cute little pencil skirt style. It like straight up looked straight out of the 1960s. It was gorgeous. Oh, God, baby fat. Yeah. But yeah, BB used to have really high quality suits and sweaters and all sorts of, it was very fashionable, trendy stuff. It wasn't like, I fully admit some of that stuff was not the most practical. But in terms of like long term wear and tear, that's weird. But man, I had some good stuff out of that. I went through a phase in 2003, 4, where I didn't know what Neo-Victorian was, but I started doing that, and BB was a large part of enabling that, because lace blouses and like things like that were super trendy at the time, like lace inset stuff, which is coming. If you haven't seen it already everywhere, that's huge on the list in the next year or two. So, alright, the Bailey is getting fussy. I need to go get more water, so I'm going to put you guys on pause, and I will be right back after this intermission. Okay. History bounding and all the fun things. Oh, he just dropped his needle into your pile carpet. Yeah. It's one of those, like, you'll find it when you stop looking for it. Magnets. Yeah, the actual, like, way that fashion works today is so weird. I don't mean that in a good way. Like, there's obviously high fashion, but where high fashion comes from, like, super trendy fashion, it's definitely changed. We've actually returned to an older, these are not my usual cookies, this is very weird, older way of doing things. Okay. Does this fit? No, it doesn't fit. Darn it. What's the point of a stroopwafel if it's not big enough to fit on your coffee or teacup? No. Alright, we're just gonna hold this over this for a few minutes. But trends are sourcing more and more, like they used to, from popular or famous people or whatever, than just runways. Runways are a good way of, like, judging overall trending feels. But they tend to be very repetitive. They tend to be all very similar. And so you gotta look for the ones that aren't like everybody else, and you can start to see some potential future things. But it's just, everything moves so fast now in terms of construction, so it's off the runway and into the stores so quickly in such a boiled down stupid way. The regular stroopwafels, they're like generic, I don't want to say generic brand, but the standard stroopwafels are perfectly sized for this. But they don't have them at the grocery that we went to, so you need to get them from like Costco or something. I haven't been in a while, and I ran out of my last one the other day, so I was like, oh, I should grab these, but they're just a little bit different shape. Angry. Yeah, it's wealthy regardless of whether it's wealthy designers or wealthy movie stars or wealthy Instagrammers. And I use that loosely because they rent and borrow and are gifted a lot of temporary clothing. Rather than necessarily having huge income. They buy things, return them a lot. It's not necessarily a nice way of doing it. So, but I don't know. I've always had my own style, and that changes. Yeah, I'm not. This one's. No, I should just do that. I don't know. It's fine. It's just a little weird. It's one of those, like, it's almost the same, but it's not quite the same, so it's therefore not, like, better, because I'm just not expecting quite that flavor. I'm used to the other ones. I don't know. They're still not the worst. The worst ones I ever had, I think they were gluten-free or something, and they just crumbled to pieces anytime I opened them up, and I was like, this is not conducive to, no. They're like, extra healthy, whatever. I'm like, I am not coming to a cookie for healthy. That is not the point of this, unless we're including mental health, which I think is valid. We all have different reasons why we eat, different times, different needs. Right now, I need a little bit of a sugar boost and some, like, happy feels. So this is why I'm doing a cookie. This is what my body needs right now. I don't need that cookie to, like, be sugar-free or fall apart. Nah. I know a lot about modern trends and modern fashion just because it's always fascinated me. And I like seeing the repeats of old styles. Even though I honestly haven't worn modern fashion much in the last 25 years plus. I don't know. Like, when I was in high school, I did a little bit. I started picking up on it. I did a little bit in college, but by the end of college, I was full out making vintage clothes for myself. And the only times that I tend to wear modern clothes is when it happens to correspond with the styles that I'm into anyway. And can mix and match with my wardrobe of vintage randomness. Well, also, it's just a shirt. Like, I'm fine with this. Like, I know it's technically like a cropped loose, but it's comfy as, and then I don't have to worry about it. And it goes really well with a lot of high-waisted things, which is what I've got on underneath. Rayon polka dot high-waisted wide leg pants, which are totally going on the cruises with me. I don't care how much they wrinkle. Perfect for breakfast, just like showing up and being all flowy. Someone said, "You'll need fancy pajamas too." Like, I had a lot of weird comments on my video this week. Like, don't worry, I didn't include everything in this. That was not the point. Everyone had like, no, you need to make sure to bring this, you need to make sure to bring this. I'm like, I didn't. It's not a complete list. Don't worry. But, yeah. Like, don't worry, I got fancy pajamas. That's not an issue. Like, I got my black silk pajamas for Christmas. That's all I needed to start with. And I have a really fancy dress robe thing that is also black silk and originally was made, actually, it's based off of a Ginger Rogers gown that she's got. Not in a movie, like, she's in like a photo with it. And so it's like somewhere between a gown and a robe thing. And I was like, this is perfect, back when I was doing burlesque. So I made it originally for burlesque. I wore it to a Christmas, like a business company Christmas party, big fancy thing. And I will totally be wearing it multiple times to like morning breakfast tea type early stuff, because it's just big flowy, like it's like open sleeve style, like long, just freaking elegant. I'm just gonna put like the black pants underneath it so I don't have to worry about the fact that it's wrapped, and like I can show all of the leg if I don't sit or stand quite right. I was like, let's put the comfy pants underneath, we'll be good. Yeah, Cunard actually has a dress code beyond what most cruise ships do. Most cruise ships have dress codes for certain evenings. So they have if you want to eat in one of these restaurants, here's your dress code. Like, pay extra for the fancy restaurant, you dress up fancier. Here's your dress code. It's formal night on the cruise ship. If you're eating dinner in any of the normal restaurants, like the normal ones, you're supposed to dress up more. They're not going to, like, kick you out for it, but, you know, you're supposed to dress up more, blah, blah, blah. But the majority of the time on most cruise ships, they don't care, and it's just whatever, just don't be naked. But Cunard has a all the time rule, or, like, obviously, you'll be in a bathing suit some of the time, whatever, that's fine. Like, they don't care on that level, but going around the ship on a regular daily basis, you're supposed to be in what is best described as, like, a country club look. Like, that sort of level of formality. Like, casual business attire, country club sort of feel. Which makes perfect sense. Given the general vibe of the thing. And then evenings are varying degrees of more formal than that. And there's 2 nights that are like formal, which is pretty common on like a week-long cruise to have 2 formal nights. You have a like captain's whatever night and then a regular formal night or something. I mean, they do that on all cruise ships, from what I know. Granted, I've only ever been on 2 other cruise ship types, but yeah, her not formal dress nights are formal. Yep. Yeah, I usually, so most often my cruise of choice is Disney, actually, for a long list of reasons that I won't bore everyone with unless you really want to be. But yeah, like some people go super formal on their formal nights, but usually I just go with my like in between formal level, and that's more than enough. But obviously I will be around more adults on this cruise, so I'm like, nope, I'm bringing it. I know I got more choices I can be. It's like, that's the only downside I have to Disney, is the fact that like I feel awkward wearing some of my more, I don't want to say like adult or anything like that clothing, because like none of my evening wear is remotely scandalous, but sometimes it just feels like way too look at me. And I'm not always looking to be noticed. At least not for those reasons. Like, the fun times that I've been like, nope, I'm going to be the center of attention on Disney cruises have been really fun, but for completely different types of outfits. People kept thinking on one of the cruises that I was an employee and in character. Like, I had full-on, I'm going to say full arguments. No one was really mean about it, but like, people were like, no, you're supposed to be a character, right? Like, because I did a whole cruise in full like 1930s style. And if you don't know the Disney cruise ships, they are very vintage feeling on purpose, like very Art Deco or Art Nouveau. So you just kind of blend right in with the ships, and people really, truly thought that I was some sort of like extra special character type act for that cruise. I was like, nope, it's just me. It's just me. It was greatly amusing. Because like they'll dress the character, like characters, like the full suit characters up in, and that sort of stuff, so. Yep. Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to being able to do more formal level stuff and being around a bunch of, like, a large group of adults. Rather than just, like, 1 or 2, and being able to, like, plan for things like cocktail hours and fancy dinners and dancing and all sorts of stuff, so it's definitely gonna be a very different feel. So good night. So yeah, I will definitely, is that Northbound Pacific repositioning? Oh yeah. That would be a good one. I really want to do some of the ones that I haven't done. I really want to do one of the ones that my mother keeps mentioning it, that goes through the canal. That'd be really fun. Panama Canal. But I've done a lot of them. I haven't done any of the like repositioning across the Atlantic or anything like that. I've done the vast majority of them, though, at some point. I really just want them to get the other ships out, because they have to move some over to Asia. Like, and that's what I really want. I just want a few cruises on that side of the Pacific. I want to make it around to different areas out there. Like, that'd be amazing. But man, can you imagine the competition for that? Whew. Get into those for at least the first couple of years, just insanity. Yeah, repositioning. So the way cruises work is you start out of a home port, and it's not necessarily the one that the cruise ship is registered with. So they'll do different things. So they'll do one which is running like down to Mexico, and then they get to summer, and then they start running up to Alaska because that's good for summer stuff. And so they'll reposition between different main ports depending on what's best to go out of. Sometimes they even switch coasts, hence the Panama Canal thing. So they'll be, say, running the ship out of Texas and going to Mexico and the Caribbean and stuff off of Texas, and then they'll reposition going from Texas through the Panama Canal and up and around to California, and they'll run out of there until it gets to be like, height of summer, and then they move up to Vancouver and go out of there. One of the most interesting things that I discovered with cruise ships is they have their home port, they have where they are officially registered, and depending on what country that is, they will have different rules. So most ships, a lot of ships, are registered out of the Bahamas because that's just the easiest option. And the way that works is that because they aren't registered in the United States, they are registered in the Bahamas, they are registered in a foreign country, they are required to hit a non-US port for one of their stops. You can't do entirely nothing but US stops. So, for example, the longest cruise I've ever been on, they don't do it anymore, was Hawaii. They go out to Hawaii and go around, and then they come back from Hawaii. But this one was a full, you start in California, you go out to Hawaii, you hit like 3 or 4 places, and then you come back. But because Hawaii is all US, and they were going out of like San Diego, no, it was somewhere near Los Angeles, because we were in Disneyland before that. I think they go out of San Diego now. They took us down to Mexico for one final stop before they dropped you off the next day in order to make it allowable. Which was like a 15-day cruise, and I've done a couple 15 days at this point, I think 2 or 3, but man, like that one felt the longest because you're just booking it across the entire freaking ocean. Like, you got like 3 days before you see land. 3-4 days, just solid nothing but sea. So I'm like, I'm prepared for the Atlantic crossing very well because I've already crossed half the Pacific, and that was its own adventure in a ship that was not made for that, as they discovered. Just one of the reasons they don't do the full round anymore. One, because that is a lot of time for people, and more than most people want to put into that. And 2, they discovered that it can be a really bumpy ride. And so I was literally on the first one that they ever did, and it was bumpy, because the ship is one of their smaller ships, and like they weren't really built for doing that particular journey. So it was, the first night was particularly strong. But of course then you've got these people, it's finally calmed down, you've had them on the ship for like 4 days, now you're in like calm waters going between the islands, and then like you hit it again coming back. And so at that point, like so many of these people are just like, no. Oh, knitting cruise. I mean, I turn all of my cruises into a knitting cruise. Truly and honestly, that is what I do on cruise ships. I do like to also like make sure I take books and read books, but I always take a knitting project with me on cruises, and then I just go sit somewhere nice and calm and happy and knit. It's just my thing. I don't know if I'm going to be... I've got not just the transatlantic, I have another cruise later this year. But I might take embroidery on that one instead. Holland America. I mean, that... For Holland America, that makes sense. I've been on Holland America once. That was many years ago. They have updated since then. But, knitting cruises would make sense for the demographic that was on that cruise ship. It was an experience to go on as a teenager and be like the only not adult on that entire freaking ship. Bailey, where'd you go? 1 second, let me make sure she's not getting into trouble somewhere. Oh, that works. Okay. She was too warm, so she's laying on the tile in the bathroom. I opened the window slightly, let in some cooler air, but... Neat. Yeah, I think I'm going to try and definitely obviously get more than just one video out of the big vintage cruise, because obviously, like, it's building up to it, and I will have a final reveal type video of the whole thing, of, like, every outfit for the whole thing, because that just makes sense. It's one of the things I'm trying to aim for with talking about the trip itself in that sense. So that way I can literally just be like, this is what I wore, and then this is what I wore, and then this is, you know. Like, I'll try to make it more interesting than that, but I think by that point most people will be interested in just seeing everything. But I think I'm also going to try and take a knitting project with me that will turn into, like, I knitted an entire sweater on a cruise. Because there won't be stops. Obviously, you just get on the ship and you're on the ship. And so that seems pretty ideal for a project. And therefore another video that I can do out of that. Whereas the other cruise that I'm going on, there are a lot of stops. There aren't as many days at sea, so I need to plan for not like necessarily having the time to do an entire large project. But if I take embroidery with me, I can probably manage that. Because it's a couple of months before the other cruise, so then I can have something ready for the next trip. And thankfully some of the stuff I'm making for the vintage cruise will work for the other one too. My capsule wardrobe will work with my area. It will only be good for cooler weather stuff. I mean, obviously blouses work year-round to some extent, but I definitely have a summer-specific wardrobe where I live now. The other stuff I wear the rest of the year. It's just that, like, 3 months during the summer that, no. Wool is not an option. Just because it gets itchy to me. It's not because it's too hot. It's one of the actually better options to deal with heat, but I get itchy, so. So a lot of that stuff won't translate over, but it's good for most of the rest of the year, which is okay. And it's good for a lot of other travel, which is another key factor to me, is just working up more and more travel. I used to, before the pandemic, I traveled a lot. So I miss that. I would like to get back to it. So hopefully the wardrobe will serve me well in that capacity too. But, I mean, that is one of the reasons why I'm doing it with layers. A bunch of lighter weight layers makes sense rather than a few really heavy ones. Because if you bring a single really heavy winter coat, you're only going to need it some of the time. Sometimes it's going to be too much. Sometimes it won't, like, and it just takes up so much weight and space, and then you've only got the one style the whole time. So I'm better off with a whole bunch of mid-weight, lightweight things that I layer up. Like, I know I was like, I'll figure out coat later. And I was like, you need a coat. I'm like, I understand that I need a coat, but what type of coat do I need? It's going to depend on what the weather's doing. Is it going to be super rainy or super dry that month? If it's going to be like super rainy but warm, then I'm going to need something more like a raincoat over all of these suits. But if it's super rainy and really cold, then yeah, I'm going to grab one of my heavier wool coats because I have a lot of those. And if it's drier than usual and colder versus, like, there's going to be a variety of options. But I have so many coats in my closet that unless I really just feel like making one and I have the time, I can just grab whatever I need right as I'm packing. So I'm like, I'm not deciding that now because nobody knows what it's going to be. Could be full on just the wettest month, the wettest October that they've had in forever, or it could be one of the driest, and I'm not going to plan for that. Like, obviously I do need to buy a better umbrella. That's on my list, but why am I not using a hoop for this? I really don't need one. I'm not doing much that's moving across and, like, contracting. So when you're doing satin stitch and things like that, it can, but these are such a small space. On top of that, I do have interfacing behind it, which prevents it from really going too far. But most of this is just backstitch, which is literally stitching. It's not, I mean, it works as a form of embroidery, but it's flexible. As you can see, it can stretch with because of the way that it's done. So it's not, the reason why you need a hoop for most things is because it will try and like constricts the space, because if you do like a big stitch and you tighten it, it just tightens the whole thing down. So that's the reason for that hoop. I'm not doing anything on that size. Like these little triangles are about the only thing that could do that, and nothing is bigger than, everything's smaller than 1/4 of an inch. Most of these stitches are like 1/8 of an inch or less. So I don't really need it for that tiny little space there, and it'd be kind of hard for me to hoop anything over in that area anyway. I do more damage to the fabric and the interfacing if I try to use a hoop. So, ta-da! Cool. We have one done, which is really cool. So you can see it from there then. If you move around, it shines in the right place, but I like the fact that it's like clearly there, but it is nice and subtle. And so I'm going to be doing something similar underneath the welted pockets, which will be at an angle on the body. And so I'll have like 3 lines that probably won't do this at the ends. They'll just be straight with arrows on both sides. So yeah, embroidery is a weirdly complex and broad thing. So yeah. But it's, a lot of it just comes down to like trial and error and figuring out why we do what we do. So that's good to go. And I can now stitch up the sleeve and on the outer seam, and then fold up and finish off the bottom there as well. So, hooray. So yeah, so it'll look more like, you know, it is really hard to like get the camera to capture this in the low light that I've got, but you know, it's there. You can catch the light in just the right way. So I'm excited about that. That looks really cool. I'm pleased by the subtlety, but like detail that makes it feel very historical. Like that is, embroidery is just so common in the 19 teens and 20s on things. I'm just like, I need to do that. I need to put more detail work into this stuff than I normally do. Making a dress with sleeves that are part of the side of the bodice. The Bellamite dress, yep. Pattern calls for a piece of selvage sewn into the armpit of the sleeve to keep it from stretching. I mean, it makes sense. Selvage won't stretch in the same way for most fabrics, but that's not like a guarantee. So your better bet is, rather than using selvage, just to use like a non-stretch tailor's tape or something. Like that would make a lot more sense than having to rely on a piece of selvage, because they're probably used to a specific type of fabric that they're working with, and that will not always be like that. If you've got like the super fuzzy selvages, that won't actually, that might stretch just as much, depending on the quality. So yeah, a little bit of tailor's tape really can help. That's yeah, I always put depending on the type of jacket that I'm doing, if it's a sort of thing where you've got like a lot of interfacing and canvas and stuff around the shoulders, I don't worry about it. But if I'm doing a very lightly tailored jacket out of a fabric that does give on the bias a fair amount, I will actually use tailor's tape in the armpit to prevent stretch in certain areas. Some areas like up here can be good to have some give there, but if it's like already pretty big and I don't want it to keep getting bigger, yeah, if it's like super tight and way up in my armpit, nah. But yeah, if it's something that's like larger and dropping on an angle, yep. Yeah, tailor's tape. Yeah, or linen tape or one of those. Yep. So like I get what they're saying, and most people don't have tailor's tape sitting around, so they're trying to just like, don't buy more things, use what you've already got. So that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it is a very smart thing to do. We'll see what this one has me do when I get further along in the instructions. I have like detailed instructions from 1921 I'm mostly following. I'm having to make adjustments because I'm not doing exactly the same style of jacket that they're showing, but it's really close. So there's just some differences to it. Like I do have a center back seam, and what else, that like I'm doing the sleeves without the vent. Just for a number of reasons. I just didn't feel like dealing with the vent on this. So I do on that side. So. Yeah, there. Okay. See how much I need to trim to get this to sit correctly. Because it's a bias cut, so I can get a lot of shape to it, but just not quite enough. For my paper doll props. Oh, it's just cardstock. I mean, I just printed on cardstock. Most printers can handle, like, regular old, like, cardstock, like postcard sort of weight. So I just printed off onto those. That's what I use for a lot of other similar things that I do, so. So yeah, because those trim up and cut well, like an X-Acto knife or something. So, okay, enough of a curve. Here we go. I can't quite get this to curve as much as I want it to with the width that it is, so I'm gonna cut just a little bit of a curve into it. It's not too much, so that's okay. Keep hearing noises and thinking it's the dog, and then I'm remembering that my window is open. Like, nope, I'm just hearing people outside. It's fine. Yeah, this was just a big pack of white cardstock, cheap stuff. Like, it did not print off well. The reason why it probably looks better than it did is because I have the ability in post to change things like contrast. So I made things look a lot more contrasty, and the dark's a lot darker and the color's a lot richer, and because apparently my printer's not that good at that. So yeah. It's all a bunch of trickery. Like, man, color grading. I'm glad I enjoy color grading, because that is like a heartily necessary part of anything to do with, obviously, photography, but also video stuff. Like, I would say all the years in art class paid off, but it's more like all the years in theater with lighting design stuff paid off. Because it's a lot closer to dealing with lighting design than it is like regular art color theory. Yeah. Like the color grade that I do to my main, like sit down and talk to the camera thing, it gets weird for a while in the process. Somebody else who does YouTube stuff asked me about it a little while ago, and I was like, all right, here's how I film, and this is what it looks like then, and then I changed this to this, and this to this. And they're like, oh, it gets really, like, what? Like, it doesn't look like that. I'm like, oh, no, just wait. And then I, like, pulled down the last little bit, and they're like, and then we adjusted over here, and it just suddenly looks normal. And you're like, oh, that just kind of looks like it did before. I'm like, no. And then I click off of it to the previous one, and it's like, oh, no, the previous one now looks like washed out, like, greenish gray and, like, sickly by comparison. Like, there's so much you got to do with that. And, like, I could go in and, like, use actual color in my lights to some extent, but it's way easier to just adjust amber and blue to get the right balance of everything. Like, that was the thing that I learned. I'm like, what makes people look more alive? Depends on their skin tone. But for me, with the fact that I am as pale as I am, amber and blue, that is the desirable thing. But depending on your exact skin tone, it might involve more rose or more lavender. Some people can pull off lavender and green beautifully, others cannot. My skin tone cannot do lavender and green. I will look like I am dying. Sorry, it is very suddenly spring. We went through, like, that false spring and then, like, really cold with tons of snow, and it's in the 60s today. It's one of the reasons I am way too warm. Just watching all the birds and the bugs outside. Yeah, YouTube. Like, the only reason I didn't start YouTube way earlier was because I was just daunted by the editing process. like, I didn't even know where to begin with that. So thankfully, like, Abby started doing that stuff, and I was like, oh, this is not that bad. Like, I actually started playing around with movie editing back before Abby did, even. Trying to play around with things because I was like filming some dance shows and things like that and was trying to learn more about it. But like, it was a lot of, it takes a lot of time to figure all of that stuff out, and I am by no means an expert or even close. Like, I do well enough for what I need to do. I could do so much better, but just I also have a new camera, and I'm just trying to really learn that, like, what it does well and what it does not do well, and I keep having moments of like, that's not how my other camera acted. Okay, I gotta relearn. Same thing with like changing out microphones or whatever. It's just constantly relearning. So I was so confused. I was like, oh, well, I definitely want to make sure I, tone down the microphone as much as I can, because when you get to the top levels, it just blows out and crackles. And I'm like, what? I mean, I've heard that from people before, and I never get that from my microphone. Turns out my microphone doesn't do that. You can make it all the way up to the top registers and like blow it out. It doesn't crackle or anything. But this microphone, the one that I'm currently using up here, shouldn't touch that, sorry, that one does, as I discovered yesterday when I recorded me just talking. I usually use that for my like much softer talking, so it's not really an issue. But apparently that one, if I'm recording and getting into the louder stuff, then yeah, it totally crackles. It's like, oh no. So yeah, that's the thing. Usually the colors that look good on you tend to be the colors that make you happy. Like, I look good in a lot of colors, so it took me a long time to figure out what colors do I look good in, because frankly, most of the time for me, it depends on what my hair color is this month. Depends on, like, exact, like, what other accessories and what tones and what lipstick, and so for a lot of people, they're good with a lot of different tones. It's just more a matter, I think, of what your personality fits with than anything else. Like, there are colors that I do not look good in, but I know the moment that I put those on and go, oh, that doesn't look good. Like, it's real obvious. I just don't do really overpowering neon bright sort of things. It just does not do anything for my undertones, which are really complex, weird colors, as I've discovered. And I don't do well in like beige sort of stuff, because I don't have a ton of brilliance and color in my skin, much depth or anything like that. So if I'm in beige, I am beige. Like, it's just all beige. And that can be done if I then have accents with it, like red or peach or something that actually make me look like I've got some life in my face. But, there's some people that can beautifully pull off just ecru. Not me. Just can't do it. So. My tip for you, if you ever want to deal with filming stuff, like learning YouTube stuff, I use DaVinci. It's in its base form free, and the vast majority of everything you will ever need out of it is in the free version. I have the paid version because I do some weird stuff, but like, you really don't need it until you get into weird special effects stuff or whatever. So, like, try downloading DaVinci and play around with things. Obviously, there's tons of YouTube videos about how to do YouTube videos. That is, like, huge, so never run out of those options. But yeah, DaVinci is my biggest, like, yes, this is good. The only downside to that is that a lot of people who are in it professionally have gotten used to using the Adobe products and all that stuff, and so not everybody. So if you're, like, swapping things back and forth, it can be a problem. But I honestly find it easier to use anyway. So, all right, so I have to mark where that line is and go up 3/4 and 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. Okay. This is nearly everything. So much fuzz. We've now entered the weird time of year where it is way too early to turn on the air conditioning, but it's also just a little too warm in parts of the house. Mostly upstairs. It's okay. I like it to be warm. The window is giving me a little bit of air conditioning. We're cool. It'll be okay. To go. Bailey. Okay, so that's first one is that far over. Okay. Bailey, stop licking. Come here. Oh, treat. Yeah, I will lie to you slightly. Technically, I have some, but I'm not getting updated. Come here. What are you doing? Huh? Are you being fussy? Are you too warm again? Do we need to trim you? Defur you? Shear the sheep? Yeah? Do we need to shear the sheep? Okay. 2 inches. Just kind of like looked at this thing before and just kind of like marked it as I needed to, so I did not use precise measurements. I was just like, that looks right. I'm like, every time I do that, I always end up regretting it, because then I'm like, well, now I gotta replicate it over here and hope it looks about right. Okay. Should be good. Okay. Time to start back stitching again. I have to lint roll the heck out of this thing when I get to the end. That's okay. That is not a big deal. Let's see. Curious what's next after I do all this, just to take a quick break. What do I have after I do sleeves? Fold up all your sleeve bits. Stitch up your sleeves. Yep. Gather up and iron the sleeve head before you put it in. Oh, and then looks like we're basically putting the whole thing together. Cool. Based all of the things. Okay, cool. We'll get into all that stuff, collar and all the weird padding and everything else. I'm excited. It's very different than I'm used to, so I have enjoyed this process immensely so far, of it just being different enough to keep me interested. It had me do a very weird pad stitching on the chest. It's like, curious to see how that looks and feels different in the final format. Like, I can see the curve difference, but that's also because the actual curve is also built into the canvas itself because there's a seam that runs the whole way. But I think the pad stitching had me do kind of accentuated that a little more. It's cool though. It's all weird geometric shapes. All right. Start stitching around again. I'm going to put in a few anchors the whole way around just to make sure this doesn't shift. The other one shifted a little bit, but nothing too serious, and I want to make sure that I don't shift this the opposite way because I'm starting from the other side. So it wouldn't be a problem if I was choosing to do the same, if I was doing the same direction, but since I'm going the opposite way, that could be bad. Yeah, it definitely takes a while with like two-dimensional sewing patterns to really grasp what you're looking at. Like I've been making sewing patterns for things since I was a very small child, so it like I didn't have the same learning curve. I don't mind all the little fuzzes, I just don't want to trap them in my stitches. Alright. See what time is it? Thanks, neighbor. Do that all the time. I think very intentionally. Okay. I can nearly get done with this. I'll have to film a little bit of it. By the time I'm done with this live, the sun will have gone away to the point where it's already getting kind of dark, so I'll probably film the other little bit that I have left to embroider when I get to that tomorrow. What else do I have to do tomorrow? I feel like there was something big on my list for tomorrow. I don't know what it was. I know Thursday has a bunch of stuff because Bailey has to go back and get more acupuncture because it's working. And she is full of annoyingness now. So much annoying. Like, yay, but also. Yeah, I should be able to get a bunch of sewing done tomorrow. Right? Right? I don't have a video coming out this week, so I don't have to be doing crazy editing right now. I might have to have 3 videos in March though, so I gotta like start prepping for that regardless. Yeah, there's always a bunch of pet hair. This stuff is just the fuzz from this. I need to maybe vacuum it or something, I don't know. I mean, it's brand new, so it's gonna shed a lot more than it will eventually. I assume. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it'll shed forever. It's definitely looks feasible. Yeah, hopefully I can get tomorrow, maybe I can get to the point where I can start working on the pockets. I have one front stitched back together, one front started to be stitched back together properly, like machine stitch rather than just basted. And both interfacing canvas things ready to be basted back in, And once I've done that, then I can go and put the pockets in, because I need to put some interfacing behind the pocket and embroidery sections. So I will need to make sure that, so having the the rest of the chest canvas in there to begin with gives me something to kind of anchor it to. So that'll be good. It'll help prevent problems. So then I can work on that, embroidering that, and hopefully be done with embroidery on pocket stuff Thursday would be ideal. If not, then you will see me Friday morning doing embroidery. But I'd like to do something different for that one. Yeah, I know, it's voices. If you're gonna bark, you gotta go downstairs. Yep. Problems with having the window open. Ma'am. Ma'am. Heck. So much heckin'. Alright, you gotta either go downstairs or shut up. No, I don't care which. Pick one or the other. I thankfully don't shed much, so I don't tend to involve my hairs in the process. No. Yeah, Bailey swears a lot. Like, she is... Yeah. That'll help. You're hand sewing a poof. Ooh, like a 18th century poof thing? Oh, man. Oh, you had a panic attack in the middle of the night? Jeez, Yep, I did that the other night. I am still, like, recovering from, like, the tension across my chest and back because I apparently fell asleep, like, just clenched up. Ooh, that is some of the worst stuff to wake up to. Mine, because I fell asleep really anxious, and then I'm pretty sure Bailey fell off the bed in the middle of the night. She's okay. I think we have little stairs for her to get up in bed, because the bed's kind of, like, high up, and I thought she just, like, went down the stairs, but usually when she does that, she's gonna go, like, lick or something, so I gotta stop her in the middle of the night. But she was just sitting at the bottom of the stairs looking really bewildered, and then I realized it was a really loud travel down the stairs, and then realized, no, I think she fell, and then, like, yeah, that was all the bad things you can think of all at once. Oh, I mean, I get them occasionally. I'm going to say it's been a stressful week, but then it's been also a stressful month, years, whatever. Like, it goes through phases. Right now, everybody's dealing with different stuff. I've just had a lot of, like, very old, unhealed stuff pop up over the last few weeks. So I'm just like, oh. Yeah, the lucid dreaming, not... Oof. Yeah, it's part of the stuff that I've been having problems with, too. It's just that, like, really overly vivid, entirely too realistic dreams. Like, that was not what I wanted. Like, I would like less of that, please. Yeah, a lot of it's just, for me, it's keeping my brain busy and try to keep it, like, focused in, like, positive ways busy if I can, because then that's less likely to cause problems and flare-ups. Give it enough food to be give your brain enough food, like experiences and new things and whatever during the day, that it's focused on those things that you've chosen to give it rather than the stuff that it's like wanting to focus on. Like, dreams are just your brain trying to figure out how to deal with stuff. How do I classify this thing that I experienced? How do I deal with it? How do I change the outcome next time? So it's like, all right, I'm just going to feed you a whole lot of weird stuff. That's one of the reasons why, like, reading fantasy books or whatever right before you fall asleep can sometimes weirdly help. But you can end up with really weird stuff, but at least it's not, like, realistically weird. Yeah. I do that. Oh gosh, yeah, the right back sleep into a nightmare. Ooh. Yep. No, you don't have to watch horror movies to have horror dreams, unfortunately. My very first nightmare, and this is gonna be like one of those really weird Nicole remembers too many things from her childhood moments. And sorry if like too much personal stuff. But I don't remember what my dreams were about as a kid, but I do remember the first time I ever had a nightmare. I was like, I think it happened when I was 2. It may have happened when I was 5. We moved around a lot, and I lived in that house from age 2 to 3, and then from 3 to 5 I was in a different house, and we moved back when I was 5, and I'm pretty sure it was really early, so like somewhere between age 2 to 3. I had a dream that was, there's that show that's about, like, obviously it didn't exist at the time, the like murderous forest animals, like the cute bunny that will try and stab you sort of thing. And I had a dream about those as like a 2-year-old. So like my brain got real vivid on violence because we did not watch stuff like that in the house. I have no idea how my brain came up with this, because it was before I was regularly around in a lot of other people's. We did not watch those sorts of movies or television or anything. I had a very limited media quantity and type as a child, but yet I still had all of those dreams. So, you had commercials in your dream? Yeah. Having, like, as much as I don't want to spend a ton of time on TikTok, it is that level of just rapid fire consumption and being able to choose immediately what works for my brain or not, and what makes me feel calmer or better or moving on, like, that can... Like, it obviously can backfire if you end up on something that is not what you wanted at that moment, and you didn't pass it fast enough, but, like, it wears my brain out fast enough at the very end of the day. Like, don't use your phone before you fall asleep. It's like, yeah, if I just try to go to sleep, I will just lay there. If I spend half an hour scrolling through TikTok rapid fire, that, like, just wears my brain out. It's like, all right, that was more information than I can handle in, like, a small amount of time. Can we just go to bed now? Yes, now we can. That is a very interesting. Yeah. Thankfully, my method for dealing, and I don't know how to teach people how to do this, I'm sorry. My method for dealing with nightmares, because I had so many as a child, I was a very vivid nightmare child. Like, I don't know if it's just because I'm, like, creativity was, like, a thing, and I just wasn't controlling it or what. But I learned how to... Because obviously you watch a lot of movies and television, and you're usually seeing things from the viewpoint of the camera operator. So I learned a very long time ago how to remove myself from the physical body that I was in and move to being a sort of camera operator, like drone sort of movement thing. And if the stuff could continue as it was, but I was no longer in Almost all of the houses I've ever lived in were like brand new, so I doubt it was a haunted house. Like, everything was either new or I, like, guaranteed no one, like, there was no history to that location or whatever, because it was all, like, Midwest, forested areas, whatever. Like, there was no, believe me, I've spent a lot of time in those woods. There was no evidence of anyone ever having lived in that exact neighborhood, like, even long before it turned into a city. But I just overactive imagination and very vivid everything. So I learned how to first fly on cue and get out of situations, and then I learned how to fly and leave the body behind so things could keep happening and things could keep playing out and I wasn't forcing anything to happen. And then I could, from there, was able to start controlling what was happening and actually guiding the story consciously. Not ever being like, oh, I am asleep, therefore just realizing like I had the control to change what was happening in front of me and make a character that I didn't like stop doing what it was doing and rewrite the way it was working. So once I started doing that really helped. I don't know, it's like I wrote actually a lot of scary stories as a kid to get them out of my head. Like, I actually won some competitions for writing scary stories. And in reality, they were just my dreams. I literally just wrote down my nightmares in a slightly less, like, random storyline. So, and by writing them out and then writing resolutions to them, I also do that with nightmares. If I wake up from a nightmare, I will finish and solve and conclude and fix it. And I guess doing that consciously turned over into being able to do it unconsciously. So, yeah, nightmares in general come along whenever you're dealing with issues of not having control over a lot of things and your brain's just trying to figure out how to deal with everything. Surprise chaos. Learn how to grasp and control the chaos. Yeah, so he's gotta figure out. I guess all this is just not to say, like, do what I do, but to say, like, even if you've been dealing with this for a long time, there are definitely ways that you will find for yourself that work. So, I don't have nearly as many, like, nightmares as I used to. And those that I do have, I don't, like, wake up panicked from very often. The more likely events for me that are the problem dreams are the ones that are trying to actually deal with way too realistic life situations that I do not want to deal with. Like, hi, here's this person that you haven't seen in 20 years that you do not want to see. We're going to present this situation to you over and over and over again. I'm like, no, I would like to stop dreaming about this person, please. It's been really bad this week because, like, that person in my brain is connected to current events in the world, so my brain has been, like, on hyperdrive with that. Yeah, the not literally dropping, like, falling thing, even though that is an actual thing, but yeah, the panic that you wake up out of something. Like, it made it far enough out of your dream as you were waking up that your body released all the chemicals that it was not supposed to do because you were sleeping. Why was it doing that when you were sleeping? I just keep hoping for more of the wonderful dreams that I have when I'm, like, really in the zone creatively and my brain, like, comes up with really beautiful things. Like, it takes me shopping sometimes, as the way to put it. Like, I'll end up somewhere and suddenly I will have either a closet full of stuff or a store full of stuff, and, like, I just mentally try and record as much of it as I can. Which is, like, those are the ones that I don't realize I'm dreaming, and then I wake up and I'm like, no, I wanted that sweater. Why doesn't that sweater actually exist? But I come up with some brilliant ideas doing that. It's just, you know, also really sad when you first wake up and realize, no, I didn't just come across an entire giant treasure trove of 1920s dresses that all fit me. Curses. Yeah, I have a lot of very vivid dreams that I still remember from like dreams and nightmares from when I was younger. But admittedly, most of them like centralize around a few key repeated things, so which thankfully I don't tend to get those dreams. Can't remember the last time I had one of those. I had a somewhat broken light in my bedroom when I was a teenager, and so I had a lot of dreams centered around not being able to turn on the lights for a long time. Which that does not play out in a fun way. Yeah. Wake up and, oh yeah, that'd be great to make. Ugh. I had great news. That's not great news. Who is... Sorry. If you don't know, in the world of home loans or any loans that you ever do, it's not unusual for your loans to be sold off from the company that you started with to another. You know that for like education loans, but it's also common for houses too. So we just got your mortgage has been transferred to this place, and I'm like, okay, great. It doesn't usually change anything for the way that ours is set up, but it's just like, ugh. Great. Don't care. It was just a very weird name for the loan company, so I was very confused there for a minute. Like, okay, don't know what that means, but okay. Now we're good. Nothing important. Okie doke. Oh, I'm gonna open the window slightly more and get more air in here. It's toasty now that I can open the door again too. The dog stopped barking. A little bit of airflow. I can squeeze by the camera. Just barely. Okay. Apologize if it makes it louder, but I need the air. Yeah. Funny thing for us is like we refinanced. We haven't obviously been in this house very long, but we refinanced last year before, like 2020, when everything like dropped suddenly in the fall. And like they waited 6 months and then they're like, do you want to refinance? And I was like, we literally just refinanced. No. Like, are you sure? Are you sure? Please stop talking to me. Like that was definitely. So if that means that this place stops asking me to refinance, then great. The downside to this neighborhood is that it's, with it being brand new, is the fact that it's just full of construction equipment all the time. And it's like, it's so close to being finished, but annoyingly they bought the property, the people that are working in this neighborhood, the company that's building all these houses bought the one right next to it too, which was kind of like waiting for somebody to decide to buy it for a while, I guess. And so rather than finishing this neighborhood, yay, thank you, Um, they are starting to work on that neighborhood. And I'm like, can you just finish up the like 10 plots that are left by my house? Like, not immediately by my house, but like, purple penguin. um, and I'm just like, I would just like you to do that because then you'd stop having to drive by my house with all this construction equipment all of the time. Like, that's all I want. I just want this corner that I live on to stop being the construction equipment area because unfortunately, like, it's right by where they have like their unfinished lot with the trailer for the manager for the area, and so I'm just like, I just all the construction equipment back and forth in front of our house. It'd be great if we could stop that. Yeah, financial stuff has just been all sorts of weird for the last few years. In like the, in a broad sense. But okay, we're almost done with line 1. Hooray. Glad I chose this method rather than everything else. Yes, it is a mourning dove. We have a lot of those. Abby used to feed them. Like, she had bird feeders. So they hang out around our house a lot expecting the buffet, which is no longer being refilled because I'm not bothering. We have a lot of mourning doves and they're all very stupid. I'm much more excited about the quail. I'm waiting for the quail to show back up. I might see about putting food out for those guys, since they kind of got used to coming and checking out our fence. So I might look into putting out a feeder for quail, which is different than a regular bird feeder. So ground feeders. But they are adorable. They had a huge family last fall. Like, it went from being just a couple of them that we saw occasionally to, like, at one point there were like 15 of them on our fence at once coming to check out the food. It was like all varying sizes. It was adorable. The best. Stretch my feet out. Oof. Yeah, we had all sorts of problems. Thankfully, it was before the pandemic, selling and buying and getting into houses and everything. Ugh. Yeah, thankfully, with the weather issues with unfinished, thankfully, most of the stuff immediately up against me has finished off space and there's fences and everything, so that helps. We do still get a huge quantity of tumbleweeds from the fields behind those houses, from the 2 open lots that are sitting there. I think it might just be 1 now, but there's, the big open lot, and so the wind blows just all of the tumbleweeds out of the field into the neighborhood. So once that finally gets a house built there, that should slow down that in just like constant influx of tumbleweeds. But we have all of our drains here have like fancy stuff that was laid down by the city for construction to prevent stuff from getting in, and we have because it's the desert we have street cleaners that come around every week or so, depending on, I guess, how often it rains. They're usually around on the weekends when there's not construction, like Sunday. They run around and wet down and sweep all of the streets to deal with all of the dust and construction stuff, debris. So they're like really effective about it here too, but we have a very limited array of wildlife in our area, just because it's a weird thing. A lot of stuff comes through, but not very much stuff stays. Obviously, we've got quail and jackrabbit, a lot of coyotes. We live right up against land that will never actually be finished. It's protected wildlife area because it's got some water in it and that sort of stuff, and some hills that would be really hard to actually build into surrounding the house on like larger scale. And so there's out this direction, there's a whole bunch of coyotes, and you can hear them most nights. But yeah, mourning doves, and we do have ravens. Those are super cool. I'm still trying to be friends with the ravens. In trying to be friends with the ravens, I discovered we also have magpies, because I put stuff out for the ravens and then the magpies took it. I was like, not quite what I was going for, but thank you. At least somebody appreciates the peanuts. See, what else have I regularly seen? I have seen some lizards, and I know there's some sort of toad. Because that toad, every evening, you'll probably start hearing it. Once the sun starts dropping, it comes out and makes the croaking noise for like 3 hours at a time. Like, just however long it takes for the sun to really go down, it just roar, roar, just over and over and over again. Ugh. But we don't have, and we have lots of little birds, like little tiny ones. I feel like this is one of the few things that I could share from my like friends group chats of things that Abby says. She's got 2 dogs, right? She's got Subi and she's got Griff. Griff is a shy dog in many ways and has refused to ever go well on a walk. Ever. No matter how many days, and I do mean that, days it has been since the last time he went, he will not go on a walk and go. We learned this the hard way in Tahoe and when they moved. Took him like running around a dog park for an hour to finally just like not be able to hold it anymore. But he apparently finally, for the first time ever in his life, went well on a leash. So congratulations, Griff. It's just like, jeez. Yeah, I've missed my lizards. They were a bunch of, like, when I first started putting in the garden, I had like 2 or 3 lizards that showed up. And I have not seen them since, and I am severely disappointed by this factor. Because I would like more of the lizards. They were really cool. Like, they really neat. Like, that's not something I'm used to, so I like the lizards. But no. They just showed up that one season. I haven't seen them since. And now there's probably so much stuff in my yard, they can hide in it, so they're probably still there occasionally. I just never seen them since then. Also, I take that back. It might also be the birds, the fact that Abby was feeding birds, and so we had like a large quantity of birds in our backyards for the last year. That might have been what kept the lizards away. So that should be, we'll see. I don't know the people that are moving in. They haven't moved in yet. So, like, and I missed, I don't want to be like creepy, like I was spying on people that were like viewing the house, but like I would like double check to see like have they left yet, so I can go make sure all the lights are off and everything. And so like I at least got like glimpses of a lot of the people that did the house viewings, but I did not catch a glimpse of that family, so I don't know. Chat room is being politely invaded by Canadians. Wow, my brain's fully functional today, you guys. Well, I mean, if I do morning, it's all Europe. in the afternoons, it's all Canada, apparently. All right, let's get a new thread. That was a little bit too long. I need to go back to Canada. Only been a couple of times. I need to make it back to Toronto. And spend like way too much time in the Bada again. I only got like 2 days in there before. I'm like, I need all of the time. Yeah, what's on my mind? I feel like that's what's on everybody's mind, because that's what's the major news. And weirdly, honestly, it was a huge, like, all the politics stuff that was happening in that area was a huge part of my childhood. I didn't live there or anything. It was just for weird reasons a constant conversation topic in our house. So, like, I am acutely aware of this stuff. Like, oh, this again. Okay. Yeah, we have very different wildlife. We have horses. We have wild horses. They don't make it in anywhere near as close as my house anymore. They used to be in this area, but as things expand, they move to different areas. Don't worry, there's still tons of room for them. This isn't like they're being driven into, like, problems. Theoretically, we have lots of snakes and scorpions. I don't think we have too many rattlesnakes. We get too cold here most of the year, so I don't think we have them commonly. Scorpions, I was told, were a potential issue, but you gotta go hiking for that. Like, you gotta go up into the hills. So walking around my neighborhood, like, they don't like disturbance, they don't like people, they don't like any of that stuff. So all of the potential dangerous things, aside from coyotes, they'll come right up. Avoid, like, housing areas, like, thoroughly. Obviously, you go just, like, 20 minutes up into the mountains, and we completely change everything. We get a lot of... We are the major fly-through, so a lot of things that come down from Canada and go to Mexico and back and forth fly through here. We are a major pass for a lot of things, so certain times a year we'll get a lot of weird stuff. Sometimes we will, like, we also have things like hummingbirds. There are a lot of hummingbirds that come through, for example. But the weirdest thing for me to explain to people, it's like, technically where I live is a desert, but it is a desert where I can look outside on a snowy day and see a seagull fly across my window. That's the sort of desert I live in. It is nonsense because we have enough water that we have seagulls. We have large lakes around here, so we have seagulls, and it snows and it rains. Not a ton of rain, but, you know, it happens. So. Oh yeah, we do technically also have bears. There is a bear up. They're all up in Tahoe though, which, like I said, is literally out. I can see it out the window. There's one that's called Hank the Tank, which is particularly popular up there. There were a whole bunch of break-ins that were clearly from a bear, and they thought for a while that it was Hank the Tank, and everyone was like, no, not Hank the Tank, he wouldn't do that. And it turns out it was some, like, really nasty female bear that was breaking in and wrecking everything, and everyone was just like, it's Hank the Tank, and he's like, over there, like, oh, no, it wasn't me, I didn't do it. It's just so, like, it was this hilarious local drama for a short bit. They're like, it's not, like, they did DNA testing and everything to discover it was not Hank the Tank that was breaking into the houses up in Tahoe. It's just, that was, like, one of those things that happened, like, this last week, and it was like, this is a bright spot. I'll just take this as a wonderful moment in all of this. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Colorado's, like, just slightly different, but really similar in a lot of ways. We're just a little more scrub desert. But we don't have a lot of animals that I'm used to seeing in all the other places that I've lived. The wild horses are weird. So, I haven't encountered them much. Mountain lions, I think, are around-ish, but they don't come down out of the mountains very much. Same thing like raccoons and opossums, like, they live in the mountainous areas, but they don't really come down into this valley area. Definitely have a lot of geese. We do have occasional pigeons. Lots of hawks and owls, and I saw a bald eagle. That was a weird one. I happened to be outside walking to get the mail, and a bird flew really low carrying something, and I could see it coming in from the distance, and it was getting bigger and bigger, and I thought it was one of the ravens at first, because it wasn't moving like one of the hawks or owls. Like owls, it was daytime, so they weren't usually out. It wasn't moving like the hawks in the area usually do. They tend to just do a lot of drifting, and so it moved a little differently than that, and I realized it was carrying something, and as I'm like really focused in on it carrying something, like how big that something was, I realized that it was much bigger than I thought it was going to be as it got closer, and then it had a bright white head, and I was like, oh, I didn't know we had those out here. I went and looked, like, nope, they are occasionally. I did see like bald eagle when I lived in Virginia too, though. So, oh yeah, we got prairie dogs and all that sort of stuff out here too, like little things like that. So one of my friends who's lived with us like temporarily before, he is very much like the animal that he like really identifies with and really loves is the opossum. And when he moved out to stay with us while he was working on like starting up this temp job, it turned into a real job, all this sort of stuff. The very first night he drove all the way from Virginia out to Nebraska and literally was bringing stuff in from his car, and an opossum just trundled its way right in front of our front door, looked at all three of us standing in the front door, and was like, sup, and then just kept trundling along. It was the only time I have ever seen one of those like alive in my life, like in the wild. It just like showed up that night to be like, hey, I know you. Cool. I just kept going. I was like, I think that's a sign. I don't know from who or from what, but there's definitely a god of opossums or something. Like, it's just so weird. But yeah, the horses are the weirdest thing for me out here. Just because I'm not used to thinking of horses as wild animals. Like, it's still... I like I've seen them out, like, past the row of hills out here when I've gone out there for some things. And I've seen them up in Virginia City wandering around a graveyard. Like, Virginia City, if you don't know, is like the oldie-timey town. That used to be a mining town back in the 19th century that was, abandoned as a mining town. Now it's basically just like a little tourist trap type area. And they have a really old graveyard up there. And which is mostly full, like, there's two sections to the graveyard. There's the super wealthy people that usually all belong to, like, those fancy secret societies and owned all the mines and all of that stuff and have these beautiful graves, and you're like, you were probably all really terrible people, so I have no... like, considering the locality and all sorts of stuff. And then they have the, like, you couldn't afford this area. So it's like, I will respect that region, but... but yeah, it's just, like, people are like, oh, you shouldn't do things in graveyards. I'm like, I'm sorry, I was too busy walking around all of the horse leavings in this graveyard. Oh yeah, I guess I should step to my left to avoid this horse that's gonna run by me right now. I'm not concerned with the sanctity of this graveyard, guys. It's full of mean dead rich people. And horses are also mean. Raccoon Girl. I'm assuming you know the raccoon comic strip then. Like, I love. Ugh. That stuff's so good. It's one of the few things like I specifically subscribe to on like Patreon. I'm like, nope, I would like to see these. All of the cartoons, all of the comics. Also having a moment again of just being like, ugh, how much longer till Lore Olympus comes back? I know I said maybe, I think it was maybe April, but maybe. I'm just like, yeah. It's too long of a break this time. Raccoons are smart, but also subsequently, like, really stupid sometimes. It's more like they're really smart, but occasionally do stupid things, and if you call them out on doing the stupid thing, they do not like being called out on doing the stupid thing. That is like 100% my experience with raccoons, being like, hey little dude, you might want to move before you get run over by that car. And they just like scream all sorts of swear words at you. You're just like, okay then, you have fun getting run over by that car. I'm just gonna go back over here. Great time. Great talk. Yep. The cost of living in the rural desert. Yeah, you don't. That's the thing. Like, we live in what is definitely a neighborhood with lots of fences. So the houses that are up against the non-residential lands that are like sanctuary lands where the coyotes and everything else is have not solid fences but have like the open metal ones that are like meant to be able to like, oh, you can see, and I'm like, that is a terrible idea. Coyotes can just come right through that. Small dogs could just go right out. Like, I was just like, I wouldn't have wanted one of those anyway. I don't need more view from that. Like, no, I can see that out my window right now. I'm good. Like, nope. I'd rather back up to another house. I still know perfectly well that if those coyotes are desperate enough, they will hop that fence, no problem. So yeah, I am definitely acutely aware when I open the door and I hear all the coyotes at night. I'm like, all right, Bailey, we're gonna make this a real fast out and in, and just let's not linger. There's one cat in my neighborhood that she's an indoor cat, but they let her out in the morning because that's just like the thing that they developed as a habit before they moved here. And she usually comes back in, but apparently every once in a while she decides she doesn't want to. And for a while, she was just kind of showing up in our backyard. I think it was to bird watch. And the first time that it happened, thankfully she had like a phone number on her collar. So I was like, okay, I'm like, I went outside. It's like, we're cool. We're cool. And so I sat and petted her because she like came over to me and was okay with it. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to message. I think I texted and tried to call the number on her collar to be like, hey, is this cat supposed to be out? Like, it's daytime now, so it's okay, but like, I don't really think we, like, coyotes, cats in the area coyotes, it just seems like a bad idea. I just want to make sure that she is supposed to be out and that's normal and okay, and cut right back. Oh yeah, sometimes she just doesn't like to come back in the morning when I leave for work, before I leave for work, but she always shows back up by the afternoon when I get back. I'm like, okay, as long as she has a agreement of when she is supposed to be back home, we're fine. So she's shown up in my yard quite a few times since then. And she just hangs out and watches the birds. We have a agreement that I don't let the dog out. Not that my dog is remotely antagonistic towards cats, but she's like, I want to be friend. Why are you not loving me? And then the cat's like, nah. So yes, next time she comes around, I need to like send a picture of her back to person, be like, hey, I don't know. And that's the thing, I don't even know which neighbor it is. Actually, I think I do, and I think they're moving, but I don't know. It might be a different house. So many of my neighbors have moved. Like, there's like 5 houses that have gone up for sale in this neighborhood in the last 2 months. Like, just my section of the neighborhood. I'm not even including this. Like, and I'm talking like a tiny section. So everybody's moving. You can. We live in one of those areas that the cost of living and cost of housing has just exploded in the last couple of years. So if you don't have to be here, it's cheaper to live somewhere else. And if you bought a house before 2020, you have now made a lot of money on that house if you sell it. Like, a lot. So when I was a little kid, the house I lived in, at the very end of the street that I was on, which is like a court, was a forested area that had just kind of been left. All the neighborhoods kind of built up around it, and it just kind of ended up being like not an ideal spot. And so we still had like raccoons and all sorts of things eat here in the middle of the night. I spent a lot of time in that forest as a kid. I was like, spent a lot of time just running through the forest. I can't help but feel like nowadays they'd be like, you left your child to run through a forest unattended for 4 hours at a time? Yes, we did. I was left alone a lot as a kid. Not in like any sort of like neglectful way, like very active parent situation, but also just even in the 90s things were dramatically different in terms of what you could just allow kids to do. We have a large pack of them because they are loud in our neighborhood. Every once in a while we get one of those like local reports of like, there's a coyote in my backyard and it's got a fence. It's like, yep. That's why you can't just leave your animals out. Definitely don't leave animal food out. I'll show up for that for miles. Oh yeah, all the time that I was running around unsupervised, definitely beneficial. Like, fortunately there was a lot of outside unsupervised time, vaguely unsupervised time for me as a kid. Because I fortunately lived on a court, which like is the street that dead ends, and a lot of the houses in our neighborhood, they were all built up at the same time, pretty brand new. A lot of them had kids in them, so it was just kind of this like universal thing where if the weather was nice, all the kids were out doing things. Sometimes they were doing things together, sometimes we were doing things separately. There was not like a requirement one or the other, and all the parents just kind of, and people that weren't parents even, just kind of like kept an eye out their window to make sure nothing happened. We didn't have fences. I think one house put up a fence and everybody in the neighborhood was like grumpy about it. Like, you could still go behind their fence on their property. Like, they said that was fine because it was only like half the yard was fenced because of a dog. But yeah, it was just like free roaming child space because like where we were, no one was going to come down that street without intention. Like to come down the street to do something. Like they were coming to a house or whatever, and we knew everybody on the road because it was a really short area, and we knew everybody knew everybody. Made it really simple to keep track of that sort of stuff. So we didn't have parents breathing down our necks because they just kind of like kept an eye out the window as they were doing stuff in the kitchen or whatever, looking out over the backyards, and we just roamed back and forth into the trees. And there was a playground that was just across the yard space on the other, like forest, line of forest, big forest, playground and open space. So it was really easy to just run around and do stuff. I also got left alone a lot as like a teenager in very different circumstances though. Most of my alone time was visiting my parents were divorced when I was a teenager, and my dad lived and worked in Washington, D.C. area. And so he worked in D.C., and I was just kind of like, sometimes as like a 12 to 14-year-old, just was allowed certain times of the day for like a, limited amount of the day or whatever to go wander across the street to where the Smithsonian Castle was. And so long as it was the museums were considered a safe place as far as was concerned, which made sense. I was always just either sitting out in the garden or like wandering around the museums. So like my safe place, because it was a very stressful time in my life, being a teenager, no matter what, it's stressful, but I definitely spend a lot of time wandering around those museums, and they, not surprisingly, greatly informed the way that I view what I do in my life. So, which obviously, like, of all the big cities, and I hesitate to even call Washington D.C. a big city, but all the things that feel like city, like wandering around as a teenager in Washington D.C. alone in like the Smithsonian, the main green areas, like the National Mall, whatever, like, I'm like, I don't look back and go, oh, that was dangerous. I look back and go, I'm not sure like people would be cool with that anymore, but like it definitely was never dangerous. There was never, I was a very aware person at that age even, and never anything that was remotely risky. I remember there being like a couple of moments in the museum where the employees were like, are you alone? Because they just see me for hours on end, day after day. Like this wasn't like a ton of the time, but like it would usually be for like, there's a week where I don't have anything scheduled, like I don't have camps and we're not doing anything, and so I just would be in constantly for a week staring at things. I spent almost all my time in the Freer Sackler because it was just right there, and frankly, in my opinion, it had the prettiest and most interesting stuff. Comparison to the other ones that were like immediately there. So, yeah. I assume most people don't know, the Freer Sackler is all of the Asian and African art. So I spent a lot of time looking at, ironically, embroideries and artwork like that. Goodness, Bailey! Sass. Okay. Probably not. Okay. That's not important. Nope, it's not. Yeah, I spent a lot of time also wandering through the bookstore, because in the late 90s, like, while young adult novels were kind of like starting to exist, there weren't a ton of them yet, and I actually found way more things that qualified as writing about coming of age experiences from other cultures for some reason. I don't know if it's just like I wasn't exposed to the other options, but like I read a lot of books about coming of age in other cultures and a lot of books about dragons. Those were like the two things that I was really into at that age. I still have most of those books. I could get rid of a lot of the dragon ones just because they were so beat up, but yeah. I'm pretty sure that my dad's opinion was that there is no such thing as aging out of summer camps, so. Well, I guess technically what happened is I just became a camp counselor for those summer camps. Hi. What are you doing, Miss Sass? What are you doing? You barking at all of our neighbors out for walks on such a lovely day? It's like 70 degrees outside. I mean, fortunately, one of the, which was really cool, one of the day camps that I actually was counselor for was at the National Cathedral. That was really cool. There's a couple of schools that are attached to it, and one of them does a big summer camp thing with lots of different activities. So I was a counselor there, helping with a lot of the classes, which was actually pretty cool. I really loved that school. Like the feel of it. It was like very old Gothic style. Well, not surprisingly, being attached to the cathedral. So of my summer camps that I did were like space camp or advanced school type camp thing. Like there was one where I literally spent at least a week. I think it was more than that. I feel like it was a longer camp. That was basically just like school every day, but like with more specialty classes. Like at least it was a really nice school with like a lot of really cool stuff, but I just remember being so confused as to why I was being forced to go back to school over the summer. Like, no, why? I was trying to crane myself in weird directions. Oh, every single camp. Oof. Amazing how like we all have these weird not jobs when we're like teenagers. Like a lot of the teenagers I knew in high school had jobs, which both my parents. It's one of the few things that they both agreed on was like a no. Parents did not get along. But that was at least something that they both very much agreed on was no, I don't have a job. I've got too much other stuff to do. Like a summer camp counselor thing was different because that's just a few weeks over the summer or whatever. And that was one of the ways that I had to go spend a lot of time with my dad's, but he still was working. So I had to do something with me. Because for whatever reason, didn't feel like he could just, I don't know, leave me home alone during the day. I don't know. I was like, I'm 14. I'm 14 and I'm in a neighborhood with no other people my age, and I know no one. What do you think I'm gonna do during the day? Just leave me home alone. Like, that's all I ever wanted. I kept begging for him, he's like, well, you know, I don't have a camp for you this week, so I need to take you into the office with me every day. And I'm like, or you could just leave me home and I will just sleep and play Pokemon all day. It's like, no, I can't leave you home alone. It's like, but you'll let me wander to the museums across the street alone? Okay. Take a moment to stop and stretch and move around a little. Oh, it's almost 5 o'clock. It's so nice to still have sun. Like proper full sun still at like 5 o'clock at night. Okay. I've got one line left. I will have to make sure that I film some of that at least. Let's chalk that back in a bit. Good on that. And I can get, yep. Okay. Neat. So I'll do that other line in the morning along with the other triangles, so that way I can get that on camera with enough light. It's a lot better when I can open up this window over here, but the sun is direct through it this time of day. Like, it's good and bad. Like, I have to switch between the two windows because the morning sun starts off there and it moves across the sky like that across my space. So I've got a window there and a window there. So in the morning, that window's open, and then I move it over to the afternoon as the sun moves across so I can shut the drapes. What am I embroidering? I'm embroidering a 1920s suit. So just doing the sleeves right now. It's the one that I finished earlier. I'm just putting a little bit of added detail so it feels a bit more tailored, finished, and historical. So that's what I've been working on, is gradually embroidering all the little bits on that. Just still a fair bit to go, but one sleeve's done, one sleeve's mostly done. I just have the pockets to do in that area, but I need to get more sewing done first, machine sewing. I need to get the pockets in, I need to get interfacing basted in, So that's probably what I will pause and do, is get this one sleeve that's finished, stitched together, and folded up and all that. And I'll be able to do the other one tomorrow morning on camera. And then I can move on to doing all of the arms. Basically, I can go ahead and like move on to some other part of this. We'll see. I still have enough time to do some sewing tonight. I just can't film any of it because it's too dark already. Yeah. I did a lot of science fairs too. Really? Really? Yeah, I know there's a dog barking outside. Don't worry about it. Unless it's the same dog that gets loose all the time, which is a definite possibility. Ma'am, we have rules. Rule is, you're up here, you don't bark. If you want to bark, you gotta go downstairs and do it at the window. No? If you can't see it, you can't bark at it. That's the rule. If you see it, then you can bark at it. You gotta be downstairs for that. Sass. Oh. Okay. So yeah, we're almost to the point of putting all of the stuff together. Cool. Hopefully I'll get to it looking somewhat like a jacket tomorrow. That would be great. Right? Oh my goodness. I just wake up early now. It's just part of being older, I guess. Not for everybody. But genetically, I was doomed to eventually be an early morning person. So, like, gradually. So, hooray, we have some embroidery done. Nice little bit of interest on a plain black suit. But I think that'll be the most useful way to do this. Cool. I'm excited to finish this up and then be able to do the green stuff with different sort of decor and everything else. So, I don't know how after, like, this will be a video. I'm also looking at possibly doing gloves as a video, because I have to come up with something pretty quick and easy for this month. Like an additional video, I think. And then after that, I think I'm moving on to other time periods and other things. And then I'll come back around to showing some of the stuff I'm working on for the cruise eventually. But for right now, I need to come up with another project, so. Where are you going? Are you hiding in the closet? Okay. Yeah, I've had a lot of requests for gloves. I'm just trying to figure out how to make it go beyond, like, how-to video interest, because inevitably that's just not, like, enough to qualify it for, like, a whole video. But, so I just need to come up with some interesting researchy catch portion for the beginning and make a pair of gloves that are really cool looking. 1920s gloves. Usually really interesting, so I ordered some leather. I have some other leather that are options, but, like, hopefully the two leathers that I ordered will work well for gloves. We'll see. And I'm going to make a really cool pair of really flashy black and white or something gloves. Yeah, glove etiquette might be part of it, or it might just be like it might just all be wrapped into the, like, why did we stop wearing gloves and all of that stuff. So that's most likely what will end up being something to do with, like, why did we wear gloves? Why don't we wear gloves anymore? When did that happen? Why did that happen? Like, so it all wraps up into glove etiquette based stuff. It just has to usually, like, bust a myth or solve a, like, question that people have had in order for it to really go far enough. So I just gotta do enough research to find the hook. Like, the people like you guys that follow me and all that stuff, you'll show up because I'm gonna do, like, fun things and cool things, and, like, I'm not worried about you guys. I want to make sure everybody's happy, but also, like, I always need to take, like, I know everybody wants me to do this topic. How do I make sure that the algorithm and, like, random normal people, I use that loosely, will still also click on it, so. yeah, I like the format that I've come up with of like a chunk of history and a chunk of construction. So yeah, from being like everyday to being formal, which happened very rapidly. Like, and that's so. I know, I'm about done. Don't worry. So yeah, it'll be something about that. Um, yeah, that video about why the 1950s just messed up all of sewing. It wasn't the Victorians' fault, it was all the 1950s' fault. It really was. Like, the Victorians did enough bad stuff on their own, but then the 50s took everything and, like, amplified it and made up their own version of the Victorian era and then tried to justify it by saying the Victorians did this. It was da-da-da-da, and then it just real bad, real bad. I mean, that in general, not just for sewing. So, like, there'll definitely be that video. The benefit of that one is that it does not take me doing a ton of prep work. Switch to this. It doesn't take me doing a ton of prep work or like an entire big project. And that's like fun, easy research levels. So that one's being saved for the, oh shoot, I need another video and I don't have this project far enough in advance or whatever. So yeah, glove compartment fits like a, I'm having a heck of a time researching glove because there's so many idioms with gloves. Fits like a glove. What was the other one that I kept coming across? I can't remember. There was another one that I kept coming across. And it was just like, no, I just need actual gloves. Can you stop giving me? Like, they use it in so many idioms. And fits like a glove is used for so many things. So I can't even just like restrict to fashion magazines because corsets fit like a glove. Shoes fit like a glove over and over and over again. Something about like white glove service and stuff like that too and everything. So yeah, I think it's just going to be a general history of all that sort of stuff in there, and then me making like a really flashy pair of gloves because if I can put that for the thumbnail and it's like real interesting, then like that'll do enough to catch people, like catch their eye with the flashy glove and catch their interest with, here's a question that you've always wondered about but you never really actually like asked, just like had a moment of like pondering at some point. Let me answer that for you. So that's what I'm hoping to do with that. And that'll be a really quick one because gloves are really fast. So gloves do not take very long to make, thankfully. Even hand stitched, not that long. And I will definitely be machining these. I'm hoping I can figure out how to get my serger to do it correctly. Technically. Yeah. Well, you used to be the ideal for older style gloves where they were really long, thin fingers. That was what they always wanted before, and now they kind of go the opposite way. So, well, one of my earliest fashion memory, has to do with white gloves. I'm definitely talking about that in the video, because I was very small and I remember having a pair of gloves, and so I'm gonna be that's gonna be my like one of my opening stories. Alright. So, okay, well, thanks guys for hanging out. It's starting to get dark. I have a few things to wrap up, and Bailey's getting fussy, so I think it's a good time. Come here, Bailey. You want to say hi? Come here. Come say hi. Oh my goodness. Come say hello to everyone. We can't end without a proper Bailey. So yeah, hopefully this was a nice calm. Whoa, oh, what are we growling? You can't see anything out the window, but apparently there's cars. You having a chat with everybody. Oh. Oh. What is it? What is it? Okay. Now get your claws out of my arm, please. Okay. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you really soon. Actually, I'll be back around Friday morning at the very least. Give me my arm. Jeez. Bye.